Good morning, Councilman Greenwell. How are you, sir?
Good, Zach. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well myself. Thank you. I can hear you just fine.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Zach, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Do we need PrimeGov or just Zoom?
No, just Zoom. No need to get into PrimeGov today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, good morning. Thank you for joining us for the City of Oklahoma City's teleconference city council meeting. Somebody's not muted.
Oh, it's me.
All right, we have a few announcements to make regarding this teleconference meeting. If the teleconference is disconnected at any time during the meeting shall be stopped and reconvened once the audio connection is restored. If communications are unable to be restored within 30 minutes, items remaining for consideration will be continued to later today, May 18th at 1:00 p.m. via teleconference, unless we have the opportunity to stay a different time. The agenda and documents are located on okc.gov. Anyone wishing to speak about an agenda item, public hearing, or to speak under citizens to be heard, please call 405-297-2391 or text 405-219-7987 or email cityclerk@okc.gov. Speakers are allowed 3 minutes to comment, and after 3 minutes, the speaker's microphone will be muted. The clerk will provide a 30-second reminder prior to the microphone being muted. All participants, please keep your phones on mute until you are recognized to speak, and you may press star six when you are recognized. And we'll begin this morning with Pastor Daryl Stetler, the second of Bible Methodist Church. And Pastor Stetler, I see that you are on, and we would love to have an invocation from you this morning, and thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Well, what a joy to be with you today. Thank you for your service to our community, each one of you. Really appreciate it. Let's bow our heads together. Lord, with the words of Psalm 90, we begin today. You have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or before you had ever formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. So teach us to number our days, we may gain a heart of wisdom. Father, we acknowledge you today to be the Lord of all. With your Son, Jesus, he rules over all things. And we submit ourselves in this moment, in this meeting, and these feeble minds, and our stubborn wills to yours. We ask, Lord, that each person here today might have the blessing and guidance and leadership of the Lord upon them. We ask for the wisdom to do justice in business meetings. We ask for the humility to walk humbly before God, and hearts to love mercy and to become exactly what you wish for us to be today. I pray that you would bless and watch over every person and every citizen of Oklahoma City today. May your great will be done. And in this budget meeting, as sometimes perfunctory and regular as these things may be, we pray that your will would be done and that your values would be lifted up in every way. In Christ's name, we ask these things. Amen.
Thank you so much, Pastor. I appreciate you joining us this morning. All right, I call this meeting of the City Council to order. We have no items from Office of the Mayor, but we do have items under item 4, presentations and discussion of fiscal year 22 proposed budget. This continues our budget presentations. There are no votes today, merely 3 presentations scheduled on public transportation and parking, development services, and parks and recreation. From here, I will kind of turn things over to the city manager, and he'll guide us through these presentations.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to mention again how much I appreciate all the work that's gone into preparing the budget and how many employees, you won't be able to see all the employees who've worked on the budget and all the work that's been done behind the scenes to prepare this and make recommendations to the council. But I do appreciate the opportunity that we have to get in front of you with some of the more direct, public facing departments. And today we're going to hear from the 3 that the mayor mentioned earlier. We're going to start off with public transportation and parking and our director, Jason Fairbrush.
Okay, good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present our FY22 budget for public transportation and parking services. And as mentioned, my name, of course, is Jason Fairbrush, the Director of Public Transportation and Parking. Give me just one moment to share my presentation with you this morning. All right. And hopefully you're seeing a fabulous title slide to the FY22 budget. I say fabulous because I really was hoping this morning to be able to direct council's attention to the title slide and notice that it is made up of images of essential transit workers. These are the employees, whether it be bus operators, our service crew members that clean and fuel the buses, mechanics, facility maintenance staff, supervisors, senior leadership team, basically the people that allowed us to be able to accomplish some of the things that I'm going to share with you this morning during the presentation, and also enabled us to operate in the previous fiscal year without an interruption of service, meaning we missed no transit or parking services during the last fiscal year. So thank you for letting me dwell on that just a moment. We're really proud of our people and what they do on a daily basis, and particularly what they've done in the last year. All right, so I know that by now council is very familiar with the Leading for Results strategic business planning process. It's basically a citywide platform, in my mind, particularly outwardly focused, allowing residents and decision makers such as council, other stakeholders, to be able to see what is accomplished through the resources that are allocated to the budget, whether that's through the purpose statements that are associated with each program, or whether it's the list of performance metrics. I think the idea is really there to demonstrate what is being accomplished with the resources. And then within this last year, Embark actually completed a inward focused strategic business planning process. We are calling it our employee-driven transformation plan. And as part of that employee-driven, internally focused transformation plan, we also have a vision and a mission that we would like to share with you this morning. And our vision is that Embark will be world-class transportation that is accessible to all, and all want to access it. And of course, we do that through our full family of services, our fixed route bus, our ferry service along the Oklahoma River, parking services, whether it be on-street parking in terms of maintaining the parking meters, or it's in our off-street parking garages, the Spokies bike share program, Oklahoma City streetcar that we see traversing its downtown route every day. And then, of course, soon to come, bus rapid transit. Our first bus rapid transit corridor is currently in process. Embark's mission from our employee-driven transformation plan is to be a self-sustaining transportation network that removes barriers of location and socioeconomic status while elevating the status and use of public transportation so all of central Oklahoma can safely and quickly reach their destination. And so since our conversation this morning, of course, is about budget and resources, I was hoping to take just a few minutes to share with council some of the things we accomplished within the last fiscal year with the resources that were allocated for public transportation and parking in Oklahoma City. FY21 was a very busy year for us, and have just a few items I'd like to highlight. We started the year in July with the celebration of the 100th, the installation of the 100th bus shelter in a fiscal year. So we challenged staff to install 100 shelters in a fiscal year. They finished that at the very end of FY20, and then in July, first month of this fiscal year, along with Councilman Stone and COTPA trustee Sepner, we were able to celebrate the 100th shelter there in the Capitol Hill area. And again, just continued progress on trying to address that need of covered shelters within our bus system. In August, we launched a mobile parking app. So residents and visitors of Oklahoma City, if they choose, they no longer have to even interact with a parking meter. They can simply pay for all of their parking from the convenience of their mobile device. I mentioned our employee-driven transformation plan. We've shortened that and call it internally the roadmap. And you can see an image of the roadmap strategic plan there just to the top right. We completed that and launched that with our employees in November of 2020. And we followed that up with an enhancement to our real-time information for Oklahoma City streetcar. You know, we've had the predicted arrival time since opening, but we now have an interactive map that actually shows the location of the streetcars along the route. So we believe this is a huge improvement in customer service and needed customer amenity. There's nothing like being able to see where the streetcar actually is on the route versus, you know, kind of watching the clock countdown, if you will, as to when the next streetcar will arrive. In January of 2021, we opened the new convention center parking garage, approximately 1,100 spaces to serve the fabulous Oklahoma City Convention Center, the Scissortail Park, Chesapeake Arena, and all that area of downtown has to offer now and into the future. In March, we launched OKC Moves, and this is our comprehensive operational analysis led by the consultant team of Nelson Nygaard. And our staff and our consultants are charged with taking a look at our current fixed route bus system, analyzing the changes that we've seen in the city in terms of, you know, residential development, major employers, and really modernizing and just making sure our bus network still serves those areas where people want to go, those major trip generators. It's a very similar process to what we did back in 2014. And amazingly enough, it's been, you know, almost 7 years or so since then. And it's certainly time to update to keep our system as relevant as we possibly can for our community. And then finally, looking at kind of the bottom left image here, our bus rapid transit, the preliminary design report that council received last week was actually previewed with COTPA back in March of this year. And then also in March, we celebrated the opening of our CNG fueling facility and our first electric bus. And thank you, Mayor Holt, for joining us for that event and helping us cut the ribbon on that facility. And then most recently, last month, we were able to expand the senior shopping routes that we offer across the city to include one for Northeast Oklahoma City that serves the new grocery store opened. I believe it's called the Market at East Point. And again, that is a free shuttle service for seniors in Northeast Oklahoma City, funded by area-wide aging agency funds and donations. So in addition to what you see on the slide there, we had some success in competing for some competitive grants to replace buses. As you know, we reinstated our Spokey service. We were able to conduct our rider and non-rider customer surveys, and even had some success in legislation. One of our legislative initiatives that we're excited about is the opportunity for municipalities and transit agencies to actually become certified by DPS to conduct CDL examinations. So that should really help citywide, in my opinion, with recruiting and getting, good employees with the licensing that they need. And so one of the things this last year, I believe really taught us was how to embrace being there for our community. Being there is one of our four core values, which include being safe, being there, being open, and being kind. And in terms of being there for our community and being there for our employees in the challenging operating environment that we faced, we put in things in our buses like plexiglass operator shields. We've installed air purification systems in all of our buses. As mentioned, we missed no service during the last fiscal year, although we did have a 2-month period from like April and May where we reduced our service for various safety reasons. We did some community events such as mask giveaways at the transit center. I know I've talked before about the enhanced cleaning and disinfecting, the investment we made in equipment to better disinfect our rolling stock. And then kind of finishing up, being there for the community also meant providing emergency transportation during the extreme cold that we had this winter, basically providing transportation to those between the day and the night shelters. In that 4 to 5 day period, may have been closer to a week, but nonetheless, we provided over 1,900 trips between the shelters for our community. So wanted to just share that with council as well this morning, and really just try to communicate that we are continuing to provide the safest environment for our customers and for our employees that we can. So maybe shifting the conversation now to what we would say, what people are saying. And this slide should be familiar to council. This is the important satisfaction ranking of city services from the last, or I should say most current resident survey. And again, I know council is somewhat familiar with this, where ETC, our consultant, identifies those city services where that are most important to our residents, and yet the least areas of satisfaction. They then come up with a important satisfaction ranking. And of course, streets, conditions, and services around streets, getting around town, as we know, are the top 1 and 2 items for our residents. But I wanted to also share that the quality of city's public transit system received the 3rd important satisfaction rank, meaning yes, it's one of the important city services, but satisfaction is not near as high as other city services. And of course, what we take from this is that important satisfaction rank allows decision makers the opportunity to look at those services where perhaps additional resources could be made in order to maximize satisfaction. And I know you've heard ETC present this before, but I just wanted to kind of summarize that again. So public transportation continues to be high in terms of the important satisfaction ranking. And then as far as what our customers are saying about our service, and keep in mind, we did as we always do, an annual customer survey. We did this in the fall of 2020. We use I say we, meaning Embark, uses the same consultant, ETC, that does the citywide survey. So I know you're familiar with the statistical validity and the confidence intervals of those surveys. But basically, if you see here, I just have a summary of overall service ratings. So as you can see, we had a 70% overall satisfaction with Embark services. And then wanted to pull in some responses related to feelings of safety, considering the environment we were operating in this last current year. And what I really wanted to kind of dwell on here for a minute was just the fact that, in a year like last year, where you might expect, safety indicators to go down, we really actually did a really good job of maintaining those safety ratings. We saw very little decline. Excuse me. And the one I did want to focus on a bit was the bottom one there in terms of safety procedures while riding the bus being 82%. So again, I kind of started the presentation with acknowledgement of our employees and all their hard work and dedication. And I think, being able to maintain these higher levels of feelings of safety during the last fiscal year really just speaks to, their ability to do their job and do it well. So when you think of satisfaction, overall customer satisfaction, and then you think of the important satisfaction ratings, to me, we have to do what we have to do day to day to put service on the street to maintain those overall customer satisfaction ratings. But I think where we really can make a difference in the important satisfaction rate ranking in the resident survey, overall feelings of the quality of public transit, is really accomplished through the more transformational projects. And so I have just three, of the more transformational projects that we're working on to share with you this morning. The first one, of course, is our first bus rapid transit corridor. And I know council received a full update on that last week, so I won't dwell on it, but suffice it to say, we're looking forward to beginning revenue service in October of 2023. I've also briefly mentioned the Comprehensive Operational Analysis, or the OKC Moves bus study. We expect to have recommendations wrapped up by the end of this calendar year, perhaps no later than January of 2022. And although I've mentioned a little bit about what the study is about, it basically helps us improve our current fixed route bus system. And we're going to get a set of recommendations, basically like we did last time, that, if resources allow, we can make incremental improvements in the coming years. But one of the things I wanted to take the opportunity to mention to council, because it has been several years since we've done such a study, that we will be working very closely with the city manager's office as those recommendations are made, to make sure that council is completely informed if any routes are going to be affected in any of your wards. That's something that we did last time. We worked very closely with council, and we expect to do that in the future too. So our goal there is certainly no surprises for you or your constituents as these recommendations are made. And of course, there's a robust public engagement process that will be involved as we roll out those recommendations to the community. Excuse me. And then finally, the last transformational project we've worked on this year and accomplished is our support role with the Regional Transportation Authority of Central Oklahoma. Again, I understand council is familiar with this entity, a separate government entity, really tasked with furthering or advancing transit for the entire region. Consists of 6 cities, 7 board members, and 2 of those board members, of course, are representatives from the city of Oklahoma City. In April, the RTA approved their regional transit plan, which, as you can see on the map here, includes a north-south high capacity transit corridor, a corridor out to the east serving Del City, Midwest City, Tinker Air Force Base, the potential for a corridor to the west, and then some type of high capacity transit to the airport. So this vision plan that they've adopted will actually guide the next steps, further analysis of the corridors, prioritization of which corridors might be looked at more closely, and so forth. But a huge step in moving transit along in the region. Oh, apologies. All right. So drilling in a little bit more closely to the services we offer here in Oklahoma City only. One of the things I wanted to do was share some ridership data with council this morning, because again, with the idea of being able to demonstrate, what is being accomplished with the resources that are provided to public transit and parking. And, one of the best ways to measure that or to evaluate that, of course, can be through ridership. Now, it's no surprise, each one of the graphs that I'm going to share with council this morning are going to show declines. It goes without saying why those declines are being realized, but also I would remind council that for the fiscal year, we had capacity constraints on our transit vehicles. So we weren't able to provide all of the trips really that were demanded. Now, obviously, some of the customers that unfortunately we would have to pass up would simply, catch the next bus. But nonetheless, it limited the number of trips that we were able to provide. And of course, there's a multitude of factors why the transit industry is down as a whole in terms of trip volume. And it's no surprise we've seen impacts on our entire economy. But just to kind of give you an idea of total weekday bus ridership, I've got a graph here that I'll set up for you. And the line graph that you see is riders per service hour. And really, we always like to include this because it's the best way to measure ridership over a period of time, particularly when there are changes to service, because it's basically a ratio of ridership to service hours versus the bottom portion of the graph, or the bar charts, if you will, which is just simply average ridership per day. So as you can see, in normal circumstances, we average about 10,000 trips per day on our fixed route bus service during the weekday. Those are weekday operating hours. As you know, that translates to an excess of 3 million trips per year. And I believe in FY19, with all services, our trips were in excess of 3.2 million on an annual basis. In FY20 and FY21, we saw declines. In FY21, we're actually, we're actually at about 5,900 trips per day on our fixed route bus system during the weekday, as compared to previous years, which is closer to 10,000 trips. So nonetheless, we're still having almost 6,000 people or 6,000 trips per day through our fixed route system. Looking at our night bus ridership, this is one of the areas where we've seen the most growth in recent years. Now, keep in mind, we only have 5 routes that provide bus service till midnight. But as I mentioned in the past, it has been one of the fastest growing areas of our service. You can see in FY21, basically, we provided about half the cumulative trips. I'm looking at the bar chart. Half the cumulative trips that we did during our best performing year of FY19, where we provided 107,000 cumulative trips. So again, about a 50% decline. So in what we're looking at in night bus ridership. And then weekend ridership. Again, you can see the decline, although it is a little less pronounced than weekday and weeknight. Cumulatively for FY21, we're at about 253,000 trips compared to the previous fiscal year where we launched Sunday service and actually generated about 353,000 trips. So the decline there is right around 27-28%. So moving on, looking at streetcar ridership, again, very similar trend. We're at about half the cumulative ridership in FY21 that we were in the previous years. So I know I've shared a lot of data with you that shows declines in ridership, but I thought it might be helpful to try to put some perspective on that. And this data here is through a little bit, it's a different snapshot in time. This is data that we report to the American Public Transit Association, or APTA for short. And as you would expect, all transit systems across the country that are members of APTA report their ridership, and we do it on a quarterly basis. So this data here is the most recent APTA data, and it goes through the fourth quarter of the calendar year, so basically through December. And through December, you can see we've included a list of what we would consider to be peer agencies. Those are the Albuquerques, the Colorado Springs, Des Moines, Iowa. And then we've also included some larger systems. If you look over to the right of the graph, you can see the San Diego, Chicago, Houston, even New York City. And so what the bar chart represents here is declines in ridership. And so in this case, a shorter bar, if you will, is better in that it represents a smaller decline in ridership. So I wanted to share this because although we have seen some pretty significant declines in ridership locally, if you compare that to our peers and some of the large systems across the country, Oklahoma City, other than Kansas City, has the smallest decline in ridership of any of the peer transit agencies that we look at, and also has a smaller decline in ridership than some of the larger systems such as Houston, New York City, LA. Looking again at that calendar year snapshot, we were down right at about 33%. The light blue horizontal bar that you see there is to represent the average decline, which is closer to 41 or 42. So again, just wanted to share that with council to give you a perspective that although our ridership is down significantly, we're doing a little better than I think what we're seeing nationally in terms of declines. Last slide, or two more slides on ridership, again, to give you a sense of what's being accomplished with the resources in the budget. I also wanted to talk a little bit about our ADA plus ridership. So in the top left, you can see a graph of cumulative trips and then kind of the average daily trips that we provide. In a normal year, we're providing, excuse me, around 200 trips or so with our Embark Plus services. In FY21, we were down to about 150. And then on our senior services, again, you can see in FY21, we provided about 65,000 trips for seniors, down from, our normal, if you will, of, around 120. I think what you'll notice though is the percentage decline anyway with the Embark Plus, our ADA service, percentage wise is one of the smallest declines we've seen in any of our services, which I think just goes to show our customers that use that service are highly, highly dependent on it for really all of their transportation needs. And then the last slide I have for ridership, you'll see where the the senior services trips are down, particularly in FY21. So what we did, and this is really credit to the staff in our mobility management division, what we did is we really kind of transformed our business model, if you will, and instead of sticking with the same services, congregate meal trips to shopping centers, a lot of seniors were following best practice, staying indoors. Some of the congregate meal sites were closed. So we tried to adapt our business model and the trips we offered, excuse me, in some cases to bring items to seniors if seniors were unable to get out. So we delivered, so let me back up. So we provided 6,490 trips, if you will, that are outside of our normal realm of transportation services. And again, this was all just to try to adapt and have our services be relevant in the environment we were operating under. So you can kind of see the numbers there, but basically we did some different things. We expanded our non-emergency medical trips. Again, we delivered food boxes instead of taking seniors shopping. We provided some urgent need trips, excuse me. And then even some free transportation for vaccinations. We partnered with the health department, and if the health department identified a senior that was in need of a trip, we were glad to provide it. So that wraps up really kind of an overview, I guess, of the services that we provided last year, some of the ridership data. And the next few slides we'll get into the budget document. You can find our budget in the city's budget book on pages C147 through C156. But I might take this opportunity to point out, excuse me, kind of a nuance, if you will, of our budget. When you look in the budget book, for example, you're going to see a total budget of just over $23 million. Keep in mind, that is just the city funded portion of the overall Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority budget. So what I've actually proposed and will share with council this morning is the overall budget that will go to the COTPA board, because it represents really the entire amount of resources for public transportation and parking services for Oklahoma City. So with that in mind, the FY22 overall COTPA operating budget is $46,579,849. And you can see on this graph here how that budget is allocated amongst the family of services that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. The one service, if you will, that I didn't specifically call out was our Norman bus service. And just as a refresher for council, we provide bus service for the city of Norman as a contractor. And as a contractor, we receive full cost recovery plus about 10% markup for our overhead and administrative expenses. So just again, as a reminder, we provide that service, but we do get full cost recovery on that. And then, of course, no surprise that our fixed route bus system, bus transit, makes up the majority of our overall budget at 69%, or just over $32 million. Just going down the list of numbers here, you can see our Norman services that I mentioned, 2.9 million. Our parking services, 5.1 million. That does include some additional expenditures for the new convention center parking garage. Our streetcar operating budget is just over $5 million. Ferry service for Oklahoma River cruises, as proposed, is $866,000. We'll see that is an increase from the previous year with the idea to restore that river ferry service. And then bike share at $152,000. So the next couple of slides, we'll look at the funding sources to support that overall COTPA budget. And of course, as you know, the general fund provides a significant level of support for transit service in Oklahoma City. So starting with funding sources for our off-street parking system, our daily transient parking makes up about 11% of our revenue, or $576,000. No surprise that the majority of our revenue is generated from monthly contract parkers. So these are customers that park in our garages each and every day. They have monthly contracts. They pay a certain rate to park there. That's $3.5 million, or 68% of our overall funding sources. Our event revenue, we have programmed or estimated at just under $1 million for the coming fiscal year. That's 18% of our total funding sources. And keep in mind, this is an area of revenue that was significantly impacted in the previous fiscal year. We collected very little event revenue. And then 164,000 of other revenue sources that could range from leases. As you know, we lease the first floor of the Arts District parking garage and some space over at the Santa Fe Depot. Could be comprised of interest and other items such as that. So that's a rundown of the funding sources for parking. And then I'll conclude my comments on the funding sources for parking by just reminding anyone that's listening that parking is basically financially self-sufficient. There's no general fund money or taxes that go into supporting our parking system. Our parking system is funded by the users of that system, whether they're purchasing monthly parking from us or daily parking. That's the revenue we use to support the system. So again, no general fund money at all for the off-street parking system. Okay, public transportation. Here's a look at our funding sources for public transportation. The city's general fund contribution proposed for FY22 is just under $18 million, or 43% of the overall budget. Federal funding is in second, if you will, at just over 15 million, or 37% of the overall budget. And that is a combination of both CARES funding and our maintenance reimbursement funding that we receive through our FTA 5307 grant. Our fare revenue is estimated to be 2 million, or about 5% of our overall funding sources. Excuse me. We do receive some funding from the state. So we've got about 1.4 million programmed into the budget for state revenue. And then other revenue sources of just under 5 million. And again, that can range from interest. It can range to some of the agreements we have with other cities such as Norman, Midwest City, Oklahoma County to provide transit service, and our area-wide aging agency funding. I'd like to acknowledge the planning department for allocation of CDBG funding to provide emergency transit services. So other funding sources there as well. So with that proposed budget that I just shared with council, I wanted to take a minute, if I could, to look at some of our major budget changes. And the first couple of major changes that I wanted to look at here was the implementation of a bus shelter cleaning program. As you know, we've had a lot of success in increasing the number of bus shelters within our system. In fact, we have nearly 300 shelters now, ADA accessible, lit, covered with trash receptacles throughout our system of about 1,400 bus stops. And we're continuing to add to that number. And with the implementation of the maps for bus shelters and bus stop lighting projects, I mean, we're truly going to see transformational change. Well, over half of our bus stops will have covered ADA accessible shelters. And all of our bus stops will have lighting. So truly transformational change. But with that comes the need to be able to keep up with, in particular, cleaning those locations and emptying the trash. And so within our budget, we have a proposal to add a bus shelter cleaning program. And that will basically add some frontline staff and a supervisor to essentially cover the city's bus shelters on a regular scheduled basis, making sure that they're being maintained in better order than we're currently able to do. So that enhancement or that program improvement is actually $295,990. That is included in the proposed budget, and it looks like on this slide we dropped a 2, so that's actually should be $295,990, and it's accurately reflected in the next slide where we list all of our major changes. So apologies for that, but wanted to point that out. And then the next really significant change we have is additional frequency to Route 18. This is a route, as you can see on the map here, on the image on the right, that basically serves Lincoln Boulevard and will serve the new Homeland grocery store that's opening. Route 18, you've heard me mention before that as part of the Nelson Nygaard study from 2014, and year to year with the support of council being able to incrementally implement that plan and improve our transit. You've heard me say almost all of our routes are on 30-minute frequencies. Well, Route 18 is the last regular route, if you will, that is still on an hour frequency. So with approval of the proposed budget, we'll be able to add an additional bus to this route to provide 30-minute frequency to the new Homeland that's opening. And again, I just can't really thank council enough or say how much we appreciate the support in allowing us to be able to incrementally implement that plan to get to a point where here, just as we're starting our new comprehensive operational analysis, kind of finalizing that initial tier of recommendations from our last study to get all our routes to 30 minutes. I think it's quite an accomplishment. So we appreciate the support of council and the COTPA board to be able to do that. So those are our two major changes. Here's a list of our major budget changes included in the budget book. We are looking to increase the general fund subsidy for CARES replacement. So as you look at the city budget, you're going to see a rather dramatic increase in the overall city budget for public transportation and parking. But keep in mind, the city budget reflects, I believe we said 43% of the overall budget. And the city budget is also heavily weighted primarily towards the admin side of things because we have most of our administrative, management, and executive team, not to mention all of the chargebacks that we pay for other internal department support, kind of all hitting that city budget. Whereas maintenance, parts, personnel costs related to operators, mechanics, that's all on the COTPA side of the budget. But we are looking to increase the general fund subsidy again, in anticipation of, eventually that CARES funding running out. So, in my mind and working with finance, to me, I think it's just kind of a strategic incremental approach to slowly building that general fund subsidy back to where it was kind of in the FY 20 fiscal year before we saw the budget reductions and the reliance on CARES. So again, just slowly kind of working back that general fund subsidy. In addition to that, and I'll run through these pretty quickly, I appreciate council's time. Adding a senior project manager, I think from the presentation this morning, you can see the multitude of projects that we have going on. And I didn't even get a chance to mention the fact that in this last year, we negotiated an option to purchase some land adjacent to our current property over here at South May in anticipation of future expansion. So we have a lot of projects that are going on. Continuing the Spokies Bike Share program, the bus shelter cleaning and the frequency for Route 18, I've already mentioned. Restoring the Oklahoma ferry service, you'll see that's a $537,000 addition. And, really just as a reminder to council, we have a lot of federal investment in that service as well. So there's some expectations from the FTA that service continues due to the amount of federal investment. And then, as I mentioned, parking increases for the new garage and event labor. So we added some event labor back, optimistic in anticipation of events in this next year. And then, of course, bringing a new garage online. So as I finish up, got just a few more slides. And again, I really appreciate the time. I wanted to just kind of dwell on what this last year, has taught us. I know I mentioned and gave credit to our people, but I'm here to tell council and share with our board of trustees that we truly are a better organization, a better deliverer of transit and parking services as a result of overcoming our challenges together within this last fiscal year. We have made tremendous strides in internal communications. We learned new ways to communicate with our employees, whether it be through our weekly electronic newsletter. We have digital screens mounted throughout our facility now that keep employees up to date on anything from birthdays to latest COVID procedures. We've began an employee recognition program, which is just fascinating. I'd love to share some of the comments with you someday that employees are saying about other employees. That's our Stoke Storyteller program, which hinges on those 4 core values I mentioned of being safe, being there, being open, and being kind. Hiring. We were able to take advantage of a down employment market. And for the first time, at least in my history, we are full on mechanic positions here at Embark. So we were able to take advantage of the employment market this last fiscal year, talk about adapting virtually. Normally we have a health fair where we bring people to the transit center for flu shots. Well, we adapted our business model last year, and instead we provided free trips to clinics offering flu shots. Public engagement, we've learned an entirely new way to engage the public through virtual means. And then, of course, safety, cleaner buses and facilities. And then finally, conclude with a video, but also would really like to give a shout out to our senior leadership team. Just a virtual introduction here, starting kind of the top left and working the way around. We have Michael Scroggins, our PIM, Dan McKeon, our operations manager, Dennis Fry, our facilities and fleet manager, Kristen Torkelson, community engagement liaison, Suzanne Wickenkamp, assistant director of administration, and Jesse Rush, assistant director for operations. It's really the senior leadership team that really set the bar within this last year. I appreciate their commitment. There were weeks on end where we had daily check-ins, including weekends, as we were adapting our service delivery to ensure safety of customers and employees. And so they really were key in making anything you saw this morning in the presentation happen. And then finally, I'll just conclude with a 30-second video here. I'm going to make sure, hopefully I got the sound turned on, so bear with me.
When life is at a standstill, we notice movement. They say, we'll be back, but some of us have been here all along.
Oklahoma City is resilient. There's strength in our workers. There's courage, dedication, and drive.
To all the drivers, doers, helpers, riders, and all of those moving us forward, thank you. For those staying home, we saved you a seat. When life is at a standstill,
Sure you caught the gist the first time. Sorry for that repeat. The voice you heard there was our very own Ty Hawley that does all of our graphic design. She did a great job on the video, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share that. So with that, I will happy to take any questions.
Hey, Jason, it's Todd Stone. I do have a couple of questions on the BRT.
Yes, sir.
What is the cost of ridership going to be on that?
We haven't decided what the fare will be. We'll go through a process with the COTPA board similar to what we did with the streetcar, where we'll do an evaluation of peer systems. We'll make some recommendations to them. Well, I will tell you as staff, and we would like to see we'd like to see it probably be as close, if not the same, as our fixed route bus system. But ultimately, be a decision of the board. Systems look at it both ways. It's a premium service, so sometimes they charge more. Other times it's just rolled into the basic fare set. Sorry, I don't have an answer for you on exactly what it'll cost.
That's fine. Do we have an estimate yet on the annual operating cost of each line?
Yes, we do. We're estimating about $4 million per year.
And that's per line?
Yes, sir. So the Northwest BRT, we're estimating at $4 million. Any additional BRTs would be in addition to that. And I'll let you know, I mean, we've already been kind of doing some scenario planning with the finance department, taking the approach much like we did with Oklahoma City streetcar, where we're trying to get out ahead of it as far as we can. We know it's coming.
And then my last question is a question or comment, something I'd like to see, and be interested in seeing is our streetcar ridership during large events, I guess, as we move back to having events in the city.
Yes, sir.
Specifically with the convention center and things like that. I think it'd really be interesting to see what the impact on our streetcars is with that. I mean,
Okay.
We all have a lot of hopes that it's going to be utilized highly with those types of things. So I'd be really interested in seeing that as we move forward.
Okay.
And thanks for the presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a few questions too. Thanks for the presentation. As always, I just want to say thanks to all your staff and the amazing work they do day to day, getting folks around, especially in this last year with limited capacity and just the difficulty. I know I've been on a few buses where they've had to pass folks up, and it's never I've never seen an operator relish it. Or there was one time I actually was the 11th person on the bus, and so was not able to get, I had to wait 30 minutes. So, you know, we're looking forward to increased capacity, but I think that safety aspect really does speak to how safe people feel. Because I know even personally, knowing that I have had space between people as I'm taking trips, and has definitely felt, I haven't felt like, oh my gosh, I'm like surrounded by people coughing. So, so I really appreciate all the work your staff have done, and even joining us for a virtual town hall sometime last year. I think that was just really appreciate all the work you all do to get the word out about all the measures you've been taking. I'm curious if all the ridership numbers for the buses, and I guess even the streetcar, because I know there was reduced capacity, or is still some level of reduced capacity, are you seeing that that ridership is proportionate to the reduced capacity? That there's a bit of a, like, if usually you could have 30 people on a bus, but now you can have 10, that ridership number is actually pretty proportional to, if we did have full capacity, it'd probably be a similar ridership as previous years?
Yeah, we really haven't looked at it that granular, and only because I don't know that we can really. We have a ton of data, but if I'm understanding correctly, it would almost be like, what is our normal capacity on Route 5, despite how many people the bus can hold, right? And then what are we actually transporting? And does that match the fact that now we can only let 10 people on the bus, right? We just haven't went to that level. We could probably do like some spot checks on some of our more popular routes. And it would be an interesting exercise, especially to look at the peak times, I think.
Yeah.
Because we do have the data that we can say, like, on the 7 o'clock Route 5, we generally would have this many people, and now how many is it? So I'm certainly happy to maybe just kind of spot check a few of our more popular routes to see if that's the case. I'm very excited about the opportunity to increase capacity, working with the health department for best practices on doing that. And we actually met yesterday in plans of our next incremental step of increasing capacity further. We're discussing going up to 20 now on buses, fixed route buses.
Yeah, I think I just be curious, because even in my own experience of like the 5, or I know like the 8 in the morning, it tends to be pretty busy, that I've been surprised that I haven't had to, sit back and wait more, or that I haven't seen people. So I'm just kind of curious if people have kind of adjusted to like, okay, I'm not gonna, instead of taking the bus today, I'm gonna try to hitch a ride with a friend or ride my bike,
Right.
something. So I just kind of curious if it's proportional. I'm also, so with the new study with Nelson Nygaard, I know this conversation has kind of been bubbling up over the last, since the, beginning of transit, this has been probably a conversation, but especially in the last few years, I've been seeing other cities go free fare just completely across the system. I know Kansas City did that recently, and I looked up their numbers. They had a $6 million fare hole to fill, if you will, and just seeing that ours is only 2 million. I know that there's always things to be weighed, but I'm curious in that new Nelson Nygaard study if there's any room for studying what it would look like to go to a fareless system, because I just think about all of the costs that go into implementing fares too, and if there's any balance to be found around, fare boxes, all the fare cards, even the app. Like, I'm just curious if there's, if we actually accumulated all the costs of enforcing fares and distributing fares, if it actually would not be that big of a hole, I suppose, to fill, to just have a fare-free system across the board.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk with the consultants about that. I don't know that in fact, it's not in their scope now.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk to them about it and see if they can give us some guidance. We also did hire a consultant just for a fare study, 4 nines. We're certainly happy to reach out to them as well too. And you did mention, Kansas City being free fare. One of the questions I had for staff, when we were reviewing that ridership decline data, I was like, well, what'd Kansas City do? They held on a little better than us, what would they do? And although it's anecdotal, we don't know everything, but they did. They offered free fares the whole period there. And so we kind of attributed, some of that, them to being able to hold their ridership to that as well.
Yeah, because I even, and I think it's like you said, it's kind of hard sometimes to attribute this, but I think about that $2 million and, that going back into the pockets of our residents who are using these various systems, especially what we know about our bus riders, that they're kind of on the lower side of the income spectrum, that money is not just going to sit around, like that's going to go back into the economy in some way. And so there's still a benefit that we would get. It might not be that direct and obvious, but I just think that there's ways, just seeing that that's been a push. And I know apparently Boston, there's a few advocates in Boston that on the council that are really trying to push for this, and just kind of some equity in just that, just being able to say, everyone, you don't have to apply to get reduced fare. You don't have to do these things. Just kind of making it a little easier to access for some of our residents who are on fixed incomes or what have you, could be a really big impact, I think, but thank you so much for your presentation, and excited about the Route 18. That's a route that I'm always either super early for something or super late for something, because it only runs once an hour. So I'm excited about the prospect of a 30-minute headway on that.
All right, good.
Hey, Jason, Mark Stonecipher here. A couple of
Yes,
quick
sir.
questions. One of the things that stood out in your presentation, which was excellent, by the way, when you said what last year taught us, and we're better when we overcome our challenges together, and that was really meaningful to me. You noted that ridership is down across the board in Oklahoma City, and then you mentioned APTA, which has been talking about ridership is down nationally. One of the things we do when we meet to discuss the economy each year is we meet with Russell Evans, and he kind of gets out his crystal ball and gives us a prediction for the future. What are the national folks saying? What are you saying about ridership and where we're going to see ourselves a year from now, in your mind?
Yeah. So nationally, what I'm hearing is, a gradual rebound. Like I don't think anybody in the industry and even locally expect, next year to be able to give this presentation and say, hey, we're back, So I would say a gradual rebound, probably building that ridership back up, at least locally, over the next couple of years. But that's the general consensus of what I'm hearing from our association. And it's a focus on, and we're talking here locally too, particularly with the role of our community engagement liaison, is being very purposeful about getting back out in the community, if you will, and introducing people back to transit for those that may have just abandoned it completely over the last year and a half, right? So we're going to be focusing our efforts on a lot more marketing and outreach in the coming year. I think you're going to see that industry-wide as well.
Yeah, then the next question I had was off-street parking for a second. You mentioned that no general funds money is being used for that. Users fund the operations of off-street parking. And with the new convention center parking opening up, is it anticipated that the same will be true with that area for parking? Yeah,
that garage is included in our overall parking system, if you will. So and so even if that garage, let's say, for example, is operating at a deficit, particularly during the opening months and before conventions start really coming in, it's revenues generated from, other garages in the system that offset that. Was that the gist of the question?
Yeah, if we have other systems that will offset the deficits for that.
The other garages will carry, say, an underperforming or new garage like the convention center garage. And I don't mean to use the word underperforming. It's brand new, so we don't even know what the capability is yet.
And then on your major budget changes on page C149,
yes, sir.
We talk about some additional funding expenses for the new convention center garage. Can you kind of expound upon what additional expenses are being incurred there, please?
Yeah, it looks like we have them lumped together with the event labor, but basically with the new garage, it's primarily labor costs. So it's cleaning and, maintaining the elevators, paying the utility bills, those kinds of things.
Okay, then last on major budget changes, items 10 through 13, you see align with current department needs, high demand for marketing and public information, align with current departmental needs at 13. How is our department changing? What are the needs that are changing that you're talking about there?
Okay, let me give me just one moment to get to that.
Councilman Stonecipher, I had a difficult time hearing you. Also, I don't know if you all can hear me because my internet does fun things these days.
Can you hear me now, James?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I think I'm kind of like Jason. My sinuses are bothering me a little, so sorry about that.
Okay, so let's see. Could you repeat the numbers? Did you say like 4 through?
No, 10 through 13. It repeatedly mentions that we need to align it with current department matters, or we need to deal with the high demand for marketing and public information. And I just wanted to understand, how's the department changing?
Yeah, well, you know, my answer to that is we actually, in a sense, pride ourselves on our ability to change and adapt. And so anytime we have an opportunity, particularly with a vacant position, to say like, okay, let's fill that position. Wait a minute, let's stop. Do we really need that same kind of position? Or is there something else we can do with those resources? So like, for example, I'll just give you a couple of examples. So for like number 12, deletes a vacant graphic design specialist and adds a PIM coordinator to help support the high demand for marketing and public information. We used to have 2 graphic design specialists. So they would help with all the presentations, all the content you see on social media, you know, that heavy graphic type stuff that takes a lot of time to really do it right. And we had an individual leave us, actually moved out of state, went to work at a police department, interestingly enough, for doing their graphic design. So we evaluated that internally. We said, do we really need another graphic design specialist, or where do we really need help? And it's like, well, we need help managing more of the overall responsibilities of the marketing department, not just a person that can do graphic design. So that's kind of what we meant by, well, let's do that with those resources instead of another graphic design person. Item 10, for example, deleting an administrative coordinator and adding a unit operations leader to better align with current department needs. Again, this is us saying, well, you know, we have a customer call center. Are we doing it the best way we can? Maybe, but you know what? Utilities, they have a really big customer call center. How do they structure their call center? Well, they have supervisors that are unit ops leaders versus a more administrative type position. So again, we're just trying to take an opportunity to, I guess, improve, if you will, with very little change in resources. Like that actually saves us $7,900. The other one adds $887. So does that kind of get at the gist of that? Or I'm happy to go through any more of them.
Yeah, that was very helpful. I'm just trying to understand how your department is changing. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I had a couple questions, and I also want to say thank you, Mr. Jason, for everything we've been able to do as far as serving Northeast Oklahoma City during the pandemic and beyond with our food access and you all being so gracious. So I want to continually say thank you for that. But my questions are pertaining to Route 18 as far as that frequency aspect. One part of that is, as we look at increasing the frequency with the added buses, are we also going to look at increasing or adding better or more shelters to those bus stops as well? And the reason I am asking that is because of now some of the changes that have taken place through the state, especially with our OK Works Job Center is now located off of 55th and Lincoln. So now we have people coming over there that have to be there in order for them to look for jobs. And so this is very timely for us to do this frequency. So thank you for that. But that's one question. And then my second ask about this same route is, are we going to also be able to extend this particular route to midnight?
The funding that we've proposed does not run the bus till midnight. It's not going to, at this time, plan to be a night route. We do plan to offer weekend service and weekday, but no night.
Okay.
And we are happy to look at the bus shelters. And in fact, we're kind of always playing catch up to those trip generators as they're moving and change. So if there are ones that you know of, like the one you mentioned on that route that we should be aware of, we'll certainly look at for a shelter.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question pertaining to the new parking garage, I had some folks reach out and ask, so this is the perfect time to ask you while I have you here,
Okay.
if there is a possibility of monthly passes for that particular garage, and if so, how can they obtain them?
So yes, we have a limited amount of monthly contract parking we could do, kind of first come, first serve, just like with any garage. So yeah, have them contact me or parking services manager Corey Hubert, and we're happy to let them know what we can do.
Okay, and then I know one of my other questions that we've been looking at is our transportation access for our Spencer Green Pastures, kind of that far east part of our city. So I'm hoping, since we couldn't get it in this budget, that maybe we can look at adding and increasing some type of way for us to get more ridership and more frequency, particularly in that part, because of the ways that we know right now, it's very difficult for some of our folks to access public transportation in those areas.
Agree.
But other than that, again, I say thank you, and looking forward to this frequency for Route 18.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Councilman.
I was waiting because y'all know I got some stuff on this. First, Jason, just a million thank yous. And I would extend those thank yous to the people you named earlier: Dennis, Michael, Kristen, Suzanne, Jesse, Dan. I would also extend that to Marilyn, who remains just, to me, one of the most thoughtful and compassionate and efficient humans Oklahoma City has to offer. Just really appreciate her work with the services we provide to our seniors and those who just need that extra bit of assistance to get them to non-emergency medical, groceries, you name it. So I just really wanted to thank her. And then this other Embark employee has been on my mind lately. So this is field trip season and graduation. I just think about my middle schoolers, and I just wanted to send a thank you to Debbie Lucas, who used to always help coordinate our field trips. And remember, this is a reminder to everybody who might be watching, come this time next year, or hopefully just heading into the post-pandemic world this fall, hopefully, that Embark provides through our Road Scholar program free field trips for our students as they utilize the bus system. So anyway, Debbie's been on my mind this time of year, so I just wanted to say thank you to her as well.
I'll pass that along.
Thank you. So I have a series of things. First, would you remind me on the bus rapid transit? You made me think about it with the streetcar real-time arrival. Are we heading that direction as well with the Northwest BRT?
Yeah, we should be able to. Yes, that's the vision. Whether, kind of like the streetcar, whether that is perfected on day one is yet to be determined. We will definitely have real-time arrival information, but whether or not we have a actual map showing the location of the buses on the corridor, that may be like a phase 2. But yeah, absolutely real-time arrival information at all of the platforms.
Wonderful. 2, congratulations on this bus shelter cleaning. I think that is a wonderful investment. just really wanted to say thank you. And this actually might be a question for City Manager Freeman. In fact, I'm fairly certain it is. Well, when will we be hearing a little bit more about, I understand, is it the Better Way program in Tulsa? I know with homelessness, we're kind of talking about doing some other sort of cleaning efforts around the city. Will we be hearing about that at some point during this budget presentation this month?
Sure. We didn't have that scheduled, but we can definitely make sure that as we go through the wrap up and get back to what we're doing, it's one of them that doesn't, it's not specifically in a department. I think planning department is going to help manage part of the program, but there's going to be parts of it that are in other areas. And so we can definitely get some more information, not just on Better Way, but probably broader, because what we're looking at with the Shine program as well. And both of those, as you know, we're trying to get initiated now in this year to get it started up so it's ready to go for next year. And so we can get some more information back to you on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I believe this bus shelter cleaning approach, I think this is going to be something that a lot of residents, transit riders or not, are going to really find that a very thoughtful investment. And I think especially as we start gravitating toward, as Jason pointed out earlier, moving to well over half of the system's transit stops actually being these covered bus shelters. And I think for residents to know that those maps for investments that will help get us there, plus these previous investments, knowing that we're going to be good stewards of those investments, I think that will mean a lot. And I would actually really encourage us to promote that is something that we're doing, to let people know that. I just really think this is a wonderful approach. And I just really want to commend you all for this. And that's why, secondly, I think it will be I am certain it will be very helpful for council and our residents to hear more about what we're thinking to do as a city as it relates to, helping to, again, be stewards to the land itself. I've received, as I'm sure many of our offices have, so many calls and emails about, I-44 and, 39th and Penn, or, you name it, there are these places. And I think it's wonderful that our city is heading in a direction that I guess we'll be hearing a little bit more about later. So thank you.
And I think too, we'll have, Councilman, I believe we'll have the Shine contract. I think we're planning to have it on for the 25th. So that might kind of lead its way into giving us a good opportunity to have a broader conversation on that topic.
Cool. Thank you, City Manager. Next, congratulations, Jason, on those mechanic positions and filling those. I think that's a wonderful.
That's huge for us. Yeah.
Sorry, I nerd out when it comes to transit. So some of this stuff, I'm just like, mechanic positions, yes.
Yeah. it's incredibly helpful, and something we always struggle to fill are those mechanic positions. So a lot of competition for diesel mechanics.
And this next one's a question. So you mentioned the flu vaccine that we've been successful in the past in administering, particularly at the transit center. I know Councilwoman Hammond and I have both mentioned to Oklahoma County health officials, and I believe to you all at Embark, that, we're now in this vaccine hesitancy. That's the phrase, people who are not anti-vaccination, but now it's more of a conversation of like convenience, and they've thought about it, but they work a lot. So now I'm wondering, like, is this an opportunity to, at the transit center, now that we're moving away, at least when I hear, I attend every Friday, those weekly OK County health official every Friday since this began. I hear we're now moving away from the big pods of 1,000, 3,000 people, and we're trying to meet people where they are. Strikes me that the transit center is an opportunity for that. Have there been any more recent conversations?
I think we've certainly would welcome, I think, an event like that at the transit center. And then also I've learned, other systems have adapted buses to be like a mobile vaccination site, right? So take the bus, for example, to a neighborhood. And so those are things that we can do, and the FTA, fully endorses that use of rolling stock for that purpose. So we're more than happy to partner in those ways if the health department would like for us to get involved.
City Manager Freeman, what can we do about that? Because I had not heard that last idea, and that really strikes me with what I've been hearing on these Friday updates. Like, and as we've been looking at the kind of digging into the zip codes in the city where we're seeing some of the lower vaccination numbers, it makes a lot of sense that taking a bus into some of these neighborhoods in addition to the transit center. So what can we do to make sure that county health officials and Embark, when their powers combine, sort of moment?
Yeah, I know that Jason has conversations with them periodically on different topics related to health issues. So us being available and just letting them know that's something that's another tool in their tool belt, that says that if you need to and you have this specific area you need to try to address, that it's an option. I know they have multiple different ways that they'll go out on mobile sites. And so this is just another one we could offer to them. And so we'll make sure that they're aware of that. We'll have conversations with Phil and his team to let them know and make sure that they're aware that that's something that's available to them.
Thank you, City Manager, and put me to use. I'm happy to go out with those buses. I'm happy to hang out at the transit center. I've done this with other events. I'm sure I don't want to sign up my fellow councilwoman, but I think, I can see the smile already. I see Nikki perking up. So, and any other council member, especially if we can go into our respective wards, like, Todd let us off this morning with questions about Embark. So I just think, that's a wonderful way to do that. So keep me posted. Happy to do what I can. Signing you up too, Todd. You heard me. Good. That's the smile I was looking for. I also wanted to say thank you for adding that full year of Spokey service back. I think that's very important. I'm really very thankful for that. I'm going to add my voice to the adding of the bus operators to increase the frequency on Route 18. And thank you, Councilwoman Nice, for giving that extra bit of context. I didn't know that in terms of OK Works and the shelter needs. I think that's very helpful. And really also congratulations, Jason and Embark and the city on this being the final route from that hour to 30 minutes. Like, this moment should not go by without some major kudos. This is 10 years in the making, right? From that Nelson.
At least since 2014. So almost, not quite, but almost. Yeah.
That's super cool. And I just really want to commend you all for getting there. I would note, as Councilwoman Nice kind of was, as she was describing the needs over there, I would ask that as we're doing this comprehensive study, that I believe we're going to be looking at just night route. We're looking at the whole system and looking at where can night routes expand, et cetera. As I was looking at the map, it really strikes me that with that new senior center that's coming at 36th and Lincoln and Homeland at 36th and Lincoln, it strikes me that route is a prime candidate for an after 7 p.m. So just if we can make sure that they are aware of that, I think that would be helpful, or just aware that there's a new service, whether or not that's the one they recommend, Let's see, congrats to the employee pay increases, because COTPA has been through it this last year. We've all been through it, but like the way public transit has really showed up, I think is wonderful. Also, thank you, as Councilwoman Hammond noted, the town hall assistance you all gave us during the pandemic. Like, that was very helpful in participating in that. And just a final few things. One, as we start talking about this we're not in a post-pandemic world. As we start talking about what a post-pandemic world is about to become, I would just, take it for what it's worth. But as you mentioned, marketing to help get people back into it. And I'm just going to, something I've spoken about a lot, but I think that an approach that might be really useful is talking about using the buses and Spokies and the streetcar to a lesser extent, but it is to connect to these districts. Like, and that's not a knock against the streetcar, it's just that it's serving very specifically Bricktown, Midtown, Downtown. Whereas the bus system, right, if utilized properly, we can move you around from Lake Hefner to Windsor to Stockyards to Capitol Hill. And I think as we're moving into especially late summer, early fall, and people are, as we've learned from the pandemic, wanting to be outside, I think saying to people like, this is how we can utilize this service. That would be an approach I would suggest, but Michael Scroggins can take that and run with it because he's incredible, as we know. But that would be something I would connect people to places. Like, I think that is a significant thing. And it echoes my remarks from last week with the BRT. I really think that's going to be a wonderful opportunity to say to everybody that this is about connecting you to the Buy for Less, the library in Belle Isle, Uptown, Asian District Plaza, downtown. I see all that potential. So it might be a way to get people thinking about where that BRT is heading and what it can do. On the comprehensive study, I think it's important that we look in Ward 2 at the Western Avenue. I've had people who work at Costco near Memorial, right, but who live on the southern end, of the ward, and they find it just next to impossible because there's no bus that gets you right there.
No service to Costco. Agree.
So that would be very helpful. And now we can also, if we can figure that Western component out, not only that, but we can connect people to recreation and employment with stuff like Chisholm Creek, right? I mean, there's just stuff right there. Get them to Memorial Road generally, where there are all of those jobs and recreation and sales tax revenue. And then just finally, because I'm just really kind of teeing you up for a softball here, but I think it's important to always kind of remind ourselves of the goal. Can you remind us why that 15-minute frequency or less is so important? And so that's my first question. Then just finally, like, I know we're heading into this comprehensive study land, but like right now, what are you just sort of anticipating now that we've gotten to this, all the routes 30 minutes or less? What are you kind of anticipating the next 10 years, dream big sort of things for us? Take it where you'd like, sir.
Well, I mean, dreaming big, thinking about the next steps. I mean, I think it's just, continual evolution of public transit in Oklahoma City. We know it continues to rank high with our residents. We looked at the important satisfaction ranking earlier today. But 30 minutes was kind of and we've talked about it before, 30 minutes is kind of just that minimum level of frequency you need for transit. So to me, the next steps are obviously, being careful about, resource needs and such. But 15 minutes is really that next interval. And it can be, even then it can be incremental, right? It can be incrementally looking at the corridors or the routes that would benefit the most from 15 minutes and just incrementally working our way through that, just like we did to get them to 30 minutes. It doesn't necessarily have to be an all or nothing, but looking very far out, if you were at a position where you had a majority of your routes on a better frequency, then you have more flexibility in terms of how you design your routes, because you're able to transition more to that grid type system where transfers can be throughout the city, not necessarily all right at the downtown transit center. Because with frequency, you don't have to wait so long, right? So it's not as big of a deal to wait at a bus stop at Memorial and Western for 10 minutes for, a southbound bus to meet up with your east-westbound, right? Because you're maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 at the most, versus now if you had to wait, especially in some of Oklahoma's weather, at least, 20 to 30, it's a big difference. I mean, we all know, even with the streetcar, that's why I love the real-time interactive map. I mean, anybody knows, like when you're waiting on a transit trip, that's like the slowest moving clock ever. 5 minutes feels like 15. So anyway, 15 minutes frequencies would be a wonderful priority. And I think what we're going to see, to answer your second part of your question, as far as the study and where it's going to go, we've really challenged the consultant with providing us options, right? So what can we do to improve our system with our current resources? We're not like, we can't get any more money, but how can we improve our system? We still want to do that. And then if there's some additional resources available in the future, what would we prioritize? And then we kind of are asking them for maybe an unconstrained resource scenario, right? If resources weren't a deal, what are all the things you could do? And I think that really kind of tees us up for the RTA discussions, looking to the future of the possibility of a dedicated funding source. At least we would have those tools available and we know where to go. We'd be able to continue to work our plan. And I think that's one thing the city council and the COTPA board of trustees can really hang their hat on is, getting those recommendations from consultants and looking at that plan and really working it every year based on resource availability.
Thank you. Well, I'm just listening to you talk about this forever, but I know we have other presentations ahead of us, and I'll just say thank you again. And I'll just echo again some comments I made last week. As we in finance and the budget and city manager's office work with Embark to think about the BRT, and goes back to Councilman Stone's opening question about the operating cost. I know it's outside the box thinking what I'm about to say, which is a repeat from last week. But we should really give it the old college try to think about after 7 o'clock service on that BRT. I just, the more I've thought about it, the more important that is to connecting people to the different recreation opportunities in downtown, Plaza, Asian District, Uptown, all along Classen and Expressway. Recreation, employment, OCU is right there, education as well. It would send such a message as we are heading into that comprehensive guide, and looking at maybe other feeder routes, whether it's Southwest 29 or it's getting people down Walker to downtown, or it's Northwest 23rd. But this really needs to be I'd love to hear we tried more. We just say, no, I'd love to hear we tried. That's my ask, please.
Okay. And just to be clear, make sure I understood. So we do plan to run the BRT at least until midnight, potentially out to 2 a.m. on, the Fridays and Saturdays, but you're asking about the frequency past 7 o'clock.
Yes, but I will tell you already, that makes me feel better what I'm hearing.
Okay. Yeah, we definitely plan to extend the hours at least until midnight. We did plan on reduced frequency, maybe going to, instead of 12 to 15 minutes, more like 20 minutes during those evening hours. But I understand you want us to kind of look at it holistically there. So.
Yes, that's the missing thing I didn't say. Thank you for asking that clarification. Okay. If we can get that, thank you for that frequency alongside that. Yes, that's my challenge. But also congratulations on your presentation, and thank you all.
Thank
you. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate the presentation there. Next up, we have the Development Services Department, and Bob Tiener is our Director of Development Services, will be providing the presentation.
Guess it'd help if I'd unmute my mic. I'd like to talk about the Development Services Department. The budget presentation, our budget begins on C33. The mission statement. The mission of the Development Services Department is to provide animal welfare, code enforcement, construction permitting and inspections, licensing and development application review services to the development community, the general public, so they can receive timely development decisions and live in a clean, safe, and stable city. Our proposed operating budget for the next year is $19.6 million. That's about just under a 7% increase. Now I'd like to talk about the major budget changes. The Development Center is proposing to add a business intelligence specialist that will help us. Can you see have my slides been forwarding?
Yes, they have.
Okay, sorry. The business intelligence specialist in the Development Center will help us with technology and automation. this is several different departments have added this position. This specialist will help us understand how technology can help us. We're also going to restore an electrical inspector and a building inspector from last year. As you'll see later in my presentation, the request for building permits and inspections has really increased over the last 2 years. We'll also add a unit operations leader. I'll talk about it in a minute. We're adding a business service center to the Jim Couch building, and that position will be critical in operating that service center. Code enforcement, we're adding a code inspector 2 and 2 code inspection officers. Last year, we reduced our officers by 5 positions. We'll also add a office assistants that help us with the paperwork and the notices in that program. Additionally, we're going to restore a subdivision and zoning tech. As you've noticed on Tuesdays, the number of zoning cases that come to council every year has really increased. This will help us maintain our service levels. Animal welfare, we're adding an animal welfare officer, 2 animal welfare officers. They're the officers that work in the shelter. The animal welfare representative, they deal with the public with intake and adoptions. We're also adding a vet assistant just to help for the overall care of the animals in the shelter. This reflects our 4 main primary divisions. As you know, Development Services provides direct services to the public. The proposed budgets will bring us to 190 employees. I think it's important here to talk about our employees. As Jason referred to in his presentation, last year was hard. It was hard to manage people. It was hard for our employees just because of the pandemic and having to close the building and the ice storm and several different things. And, you know, I want to let my staff, they've done a really good job. We were able to continue to provide service and help our customers. So now I'm going to talk about some operational efficiencies. These are some of the things that we're doing to improve our service. As I talked about earlier, we're going to put a business service center in the first floor of the Jim Couch building. This was really Craig's suggestion. We've worked with IT and general services to prepare it. There's going to be, if you've been in the building, it's right where the utilities offices used to be. We'll provide all our permitting services and licensing services. We're either going to, we're additionally going to have a plan review section there so they can do some simple plan review. The Couch building has been closed for the last year because of the pandemic, and establishing this business center is going to allow us to, customers will only come into the first floor unless they're escorted to, you know, a different floor for a meeting or something by an employee. This is really to help us provide security to the building. It's something that we've talked about for a long time. And this business, the Development Center really will be managing the Business Service Center. Parks and Public Works will also have a window there to be able to take applications and interact with the public. The Development Center, last year during the ice storm, we provided a remote video inspection process. Basically, what that does is it allows the contractor to Skype with an inspector, and we can do the inspection by video. We use this because of the multiple electrical meter box resets we had to do after all the limbs and the problems with the ice storm. So we're gonna expand that video inspection process, and hopefully it will improve our services. Additionally, we're going to continue to work with on the electronic plan review. Our business specialists should help us with these things. Code enforcement, we're streamlining our case work in the field. We're changing to a tablet where we can enter data, we can take pictures, all on one device. Currently, they have a computer in the middle of their front seat, and this is going to make it more efficient for them and easier to manage. Animal welfare, we're going to streamline our volunteer coordination. Basically, we utilize over almost 200,000 hours of volunteer work to help us maintain the service that we provide at animal welfare. And we're also going to allocate a supervisor to the community outreach program. Now I'm just going to go through each of the divisions. Development Center is our largest division. David Adcock is the manager. So we complete over 122,000 inspections a year. So you can see there we have almost over 70,000 permits and business licenses that we've been issuing. Something that you'll see later in the presentation is that even though we had a pandemic, our caseloads have really increased. And so being able to add the additional positions is really going to help us. This next slide is our support. This shows you since in 19, we were FY19, we had 53,000 permits requested. We're projecting by the end of the year we'll be almost at 67,000 permits requested. This is an increase of about 15% over FY19. And to go along with our inspection, our building permit increase, that also generates a need for more inspections. The increase in inspections has gone up since FY19 to over 100. We're anticipating over 122,000 inspections. What's really driving this is medical marijuana and residential permits. Residential permits are making up about 75% of the total requests that we receive each year. Again, these things are both, I mean, good for our economy, good for the Oklahoma City's continue to grow through the pandemic. But the downside to that is our ability to do the inspections. Our goal is to complete inspections in one day, 90% of the time. With the increased number of inspections, right now we're down to 76%. That's a rolling number. We're working on it, and the ability to add the electrical inspector and the building inspector will help us improve those numbers back up to hopefully over 90% within a few months. Now I'm going to talk about code enforcement briefly. They complete over 72,000 inspections a year. I had 2.5 inches of rain on Sunday, so that means that the high grass and weed season's starting. So you can see there we have over 1,600 high grass and weed violations each year. We do over 230 unsecured structures. You see those every Tuesday at council. Chad Davidson is the superintendent over this. They have 40 employees. We have 22 inspectors in the field. This slide, our goal when we get a complaint through the Action Center, our goal is to complete or have a first inspection within 4 days. 70% of the time. Right now we're at 90%, and I think it really reflects a dedication by the employees to complete their job and do it right. Inspections is one of those things where you receive a complaint and somebody's unhappy, either the person they're complaining about or the person that turned in the complaint. It's hard to get everybody happy when you're doing inspections like this, but we're doing a good job of getting to those inspections. I'm going to just run through some pictures of before and after. I think the key here is that it's important to a neighborhood to, you know, if you can keep these houses in as part of the neighborhood, it makes them stronger. Something that we started doing early last year, when we send a notice to a property owner, we provide a resource sheet that gives the owner some opportunities to make contact with some nonprofits that might be able to help them get help painting the house or cleaning up junk and debris. We also provide them with a pamphlet from the planning department. They have a program that allows for low interest loans to make improvements to their property. So we're thinking that those, you know, we're going to have some good luck with getting neighbors and property owners help to solve these issues. I'm going to talk briefly about subdivision zoning. As you can see there's 528 zoning application requests this year. The mayor's mentioned it a couple of times that the number of zoning cases that you're seeing every Tuesday has gone up. Well, basically that's because this next slide, it's increased almost 58%. So we're adding a position back here that should help us continue to process in a timely manner. You know, this is another indication that the economy, even though we had a pandemic, has continued to grow. And it's, you know, it's been hard for our employees, and but they've all done a good job. Now talk a little bit about animal welfare. We have almost 11,000 visitors a month to the shelter. They operate 7 days a week. They operated through the pandemic. They had separation and masks, and you know, it was difficult for them, but they did a good job. They have several programs in the community. We have a community spade and neuter program that if you're a citizen of Oklahoma City, you can get your animal spayed or neutered for free. You just have to sign up, and we have a vet that we contract with. They did over 8,000 last year. We have an educational outreach where we do presentations to neighborhood associations, the Rotary Club. We have a very strong social media presence, so we can get information out. We have a mobile adoption vehicle that allows us some flexibility. We can go to, I know before the pandemic, we went to McDonald's and we do a adoption event there. They actually had their first Clear the Shelter event last weekend. They adopted out of over 100 animals just in the parking lot of the shelter. Something I talked about earlier is our volunteer hours. Almost 200,000. If you know the shelter, we'd struggle to operate the shelter if we didn't have our volunteers. We average 50 foster families a month, and that allows us to move the animals out of the shelter, and it really helps with our live release rate numbers. And this next slide, I wanted to show you that I should have said John Gary is the superintendent. That I know you probably met him. We've worked really hard with our response times for our field officers. This is an indication. This is our priority 2 calls, which basically is severe injury or loss of animal life, includes sick and injured animals and cruelty cases. Our target is 70%. We're able to meet that. And the thing I want to mention here is that we have 3 priorities, and all our response times are going up. So that's trend, because the better we can respond to calls, the safer people feel in their neighborhoods when they're walking their dogs or the kids are playing in the park. And John's put an emphasis on working on this. And then the last slide is my favorite. This is our live release rate. The staff at the shelter works really hard to get as many of the animals out live that they can. When the Development Services Department started in FY09, our live release rate was 35%. So that meant we were doing 20,000 animals a year through the shelter, and only 35% of those were leaving live. And we worked with the Central Oklahoma Humane Society and the ASPCA, and we tried to find programs across the country that would help us improve that rate. And at that time, they asked us if we'd put a stretch rate of 75%. And really didn't feel like we could do that, but we did it anyway. And now the national average is 90. John is recognized across the country as an expert now. And I mean, it really came down to just hard work from the employees and good management practices. And I tried to stay out of the way, and John was able to. They've done a really good job. And now questions.
Hey, Bob, Mark Stonecipher here. First of all, I want to thank you for your 40th anniversary with the service to Oklahoma City. We all know you well. We're all very proud of your work, and we enjoyed your presentation today. A couple of things I wanted to focus on, if we could, dealing with code violations, planning review, and zoning and subdivisions. You said a couple of things that are kind of music to my ear when you start talking about inspections by video, electronic planning review, updating field devices where we can do faster reviews. And you may not be able to do it today, but at some point, could you kind of give me a rollout, a timeline on when we're looking for improving our inspections by video, electronic planning review, and updating field devices, please?
Okay, yeah, on the electronic plan review, we've been working on that for several months now, and there have been some bugs, but we understand that our commercial customers have been pretty happy with it because of the detail. It allows us to get information to Public Works and utilities and fire pretty efficiently. We're still working through some issues on our residential plan review, but I can get you some numbers on that. The video inspection, we're really only able to do like maybe the final inspections, or if we've identified a plug that needed to be relocated, we can do that. But hopefully with our business specialists, we'll be able to bring an expert in to help us, to improve those services. We also put a lot during the COVID issues, we put a lot of things online where people could do it, like apply for licenses and permits, and that seemed to help. So I can get back with you on some additional information on that.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. One other question with the increase in zoning applications, up approximately 58% increase. What can we do to help? Is there anything we need to be doing to add to the budget to help with that? Because this is a great problem to have. It's our city growing. It's our city expanding. It's our city doing better things. And so we all want to be there and help any way we can, Bob.
Well, this budget has one position that we're adding. As you know, that's our smallest division. They support the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission, as well as prepare the reports that you get every Tuesday. They've really done a good job. They're really a pretty efficient division. They work hand in hand with planning to get the recommendations out. So I think if you approve of this budget, that new position will really help us to continue to be consistent in our response.
The other thing you mentioned was the loss of some positions. You mentioned a loss of 5 positions. And if you look at I think that's in the code violations. But if you look at major budget changes, it talks about some personnel that we've added. Are we making up for those 5 lost positions that you talked about earlier in your presentation?
Well, we're adding 2 code enforcement officers back with a code enforcement officer 2. So we are making some progress there. We're really kind of we've changed our emphasis on response to complaints. We've had to reduce our ability to do proactive inspections. But, I think, again, the budget will help us, and we're going to roll out that new tablet with the pictures and the computer. That will all make us more efficient in that area.
And I saw we added some additional staff for nuisance abatement. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that position was one that we were restoring from a cut last year. When you do 70,000 inspections, you have to have a team that processes the notices and the paperwork and answers the phone calls. And that position will be added back into that area to help us make sure we get the appropriate notices out to the property owners and work on answered questions. I mean, that's really where they're going to emphasize that, because that hurt us to cut that position last year, but getting it back will really help them.
Again, thank you for the presentation. More importantly, thank you for 40 years of service to the city of Oklahoma City.
Thank you.
I have just a few questions, Bob. I was curious, can I get a copy of that resource sheet that you all send out with notices?
Sure. Yeah.
Because I think that's a great, I think it's a very probably jarring thing for people to get those notices. So having some resources of not feeling just kind of floundering, I don't know where to look, or, especially I know I've spoken with folks who are elderly and maybe can't get out and mow the grass or, fix up the paint or whatever on their facade. So I think that's really great. I'm curious with the speaking to Councilman Stonecipher's questions about the increase in zoning cases. Do we anticipate and this might maybe be a question more for planning, but I feel like maybe you have some insight into it as well, but with the code update work, do we expect that number will even out a little bit, just with, if we have, I know you all will still need to be processing those applications, but if they're not nearly as particular, or there's not as many variances based on the SPUDs versus having more flexible zoning just within our code, do we expect that to kind of help with that workload at all? Or is it just, we'll have the same number of cases, that it'll just be maybe less back and forth with the applicants, or what do we expect from that process?
Well, the one thing that's really driven this increase has been residential development. And my understanding from reading a few articles is that the beginning of the pandemic, things kind of stopped, and now they've picked it back up. I think with the new development regs, there will be some of that where, what we hope is that the development regs you can rezone a property, and then you have more flexibility and you don't have to come back with zoning cases. So, that's still, Jeff probably answer it better, but we're still a few months away from really getting in, the detail of that. But I think the residential is going to slow down a little bit, because it's catching up to where they want it to be. And then I think the development regs change I think it'll balance out. I don't think it will go back to FY19. But.
Okay. And then I just want to say thank you. I mean, looking at that chart about the live release, just all of the support, and thank you to our animal welfare staff and John for leading that department. It's amazing to see that climb and sustaining that over time, I think is really amazing. So I just really appreciate all of the creative work that they've done to rethink and sort of do more with the same amount, or just a little bit more resources, but not definitely not the same proportion of increase in resources to the work that they've done to really reimagine and think about how to do that work with a lot of limits and confinements of their building. So I appreciate all the work they're doing.
Yeah, when I started supervising it in 2009, and I told Craig this, the first 2 weeks, whenever I drive to work, all I saw were stray dogs. You know, it's been amazing to me how that they really work hard and what they do, and so.
I also want to say a huge thank you, good job, congrats to the animal welfare social media team. They do such a great job. I recently saw a Bob Ross bunny that they posted about. I've seen little, like, just the creative marketing to really promote different types of animals. Even I saw like the Kentucky Derby dogs and hats, and just that kind of really those things that really, I think, set apart our animal welfare and get more eyes onto those animals is just so charming and sweet, but also incredibly effective. Because I've looked at more guinea pigs than I care to admit, just based on some of the little lemonade stands and other creative photo shoots that they've done to promote those animals. So yeah, also great job to the marketing folks for their creative work.
Thanks.
Yes, Mr. Teener, I wanted to say congratulations on 40 years first. I know that speaks volumes for you to be with our city for that long of tenure, and to see just some of your work as far as the numbers we've seen. So my questions are pertaining to the digital format that we're moving to in some aspects. How will that impact code enforcement? And the reason I ask with that is just because of the conversations I've had with many of our community folks who are in state and out of state, who take care of those properties and those violations that may appear on their property. Is there a way for us to look at how we capture emails or being able to send out notices or information in that aspect as well?
Well, the upgrades really primarily with our field inspectors, but it will enter the data directly into our system, which makes our ability to respond and contact property owners will be better at it. It's until we kind of get it running, it's hard to know, how it's going to help us. But we feel pretty comfortable that, right now we've got a computer and we take pictures, and then they have to stop and enter the data, and this tablet's going to allow them to do all that, right after they do the inspection. So I can't really say yet, but I think overall it will help us.
So I'm thinking futuristically of what the possibilities could be.
Yeah, and the technology changes all the time, and we're always looking for ways to make it better. And we, really with code enforcement, we want the property owner, we want to give them every opportunity to resolve the violation themselves. And I want to give you some credit on the resource sheet, because that was really kind of your idea, helping us put that together. But I think that's going to help with our interaction with with the inspector and the property owner, where we're giving them help instead of just telling them you're in violation and you need to fix it. So I think long term that's going to be a really good benefit for code enforcement.
And maybe for the couple of one-off situations I have, we'll probably just visit to see how we can better serve some of our residents pertaining to those particular issues, just to ensure that it doesn't happen to some of our other residents who may be in our city limits as well. And also my second question is dealing with animal welfare. And I know last year we had to postpone, and I could be wrong, so correct me if I am, postpone some of our immunizations for our animals that were free to the public. Are we going to continue that and bring it back this year? Because I was able to benefit from my little dogs. And I know a lot of folks, especially just for the cost of being able to provide for our animals and those types of yearly and annual shots can take a toll on those trying to take care of them. So I'm just curious if we're going to rev that back up this year.
Yes, that program's paid for. We use half of the adoption fees, and with the pandemic, everything slowed down. And so that kind of hit us a little bit. And then there were some issues about being able to transfer the animals to the vet to get them spayed and neutered. But yeah, that's one of the key components to our live release rate, is to get as many animals in the community spayed and neutered as we can. So yeah, we're going to work hard to get back to our current rate to get that done.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just wanted to three things. One, I'm excited about this the veterinarian assistant that you all are adding. I think that's wonderful. So thank you for that work. And then also just for the additional officers within animal welfare, I think that's also, that's really commendable in getting us toward that goal of better animal care and higher adoption rates. Also, I've said it before, I'll say it again. When I learned that we constructed this building, this animal welfare building, with no intention really of that live release rate being anywhere near what we're doing now. When I learned that while I was taking a tour of the animal shelter 2 years ago, and it reduced me to a blubbering child. I was very devastated and equally encouraged by John's work. So please forward to him my sincere gratitude, because seeing that chart, I think it represents an increase in our humanity. That's how I feel about what we are doing right now. The fact that we are trying to make sure that these creatures exist peacefully to the best of their ability. They're sometimes very rambunctious around the house, I've learned. So just lots of commending for that. I really wanted to say thank you to Councilwoman Nice and to your team for providing those resources to residents. That is a wonderful thing that you all are doing. That is a wonderful thing. One of my grave concerns, particularly as MAPS 4 invests the way that it is investing in the neighborhoods, particularly with like the street enhancement and investments, displacement remains top of mind for me. I want people who live in these neighborhoods and these historic commercial districts to be the one who benefit from this next chapter of investments, this Renaissance story. And I'm very worried about, just anecdotally, how many times I hear that, a resident is receiving code violation reports on them. And it seems very, like, there's one thing, like if someone, and we've talked about this, some out-of-state property owner has a property, they're using it as an asset, which I just can't even deal with that. But using it as that rather than a way to invest in a neighborhood and to be a part of a community. So that's one thing, reporting those sorts of just like, or if it's a resident who truly is just letting things overgrow, fall apart. But it's a whole nother ballgame when we have speculators in the real estate market who are reporting on the tiniest infractions or whatever to try and get someone out of their home. And I that is something I hear as a council person. It's something I also was already hearing as just like a resident of the city prior to my time on council. So I love providing those resources the way that you all are doing to kind of help those residents, because I think that's how we mitigate that. So like I said, grave concern for me. I really worry about some of the folk who I don't think have the most ethical intentions when they do those reportings. So just really thank you for that. And yeah, I think those are kind of my big things. So thank you for the animal welfare work that you're doing and the social media stuff. Councilwoman Hammond is exactly right. My goodness gracious. Again, blubbering mess when I'm scrolling through them. It's like, adopt them all, you know, so thank you.
Yeah, I can't take any credit for the social media stuff, but they're good at it and it's really helped us. So, I mean, I guess I don't get in the way. Maybe that's what I do.
Good delegation work, Ben, and tell them
That's
thank
right. Good super.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate your leadership for the city and within the department. So next up, we have the Parks and Recreation Department. Doug Cupper, our Parks and Recreation Director, will provide the presentation. I just want to acknowledge that Doug has announced his retirement and really appreciate his leadership for our city and just the difference he's made in the community and our park system and the way that he's just provided such great leadership for us and just his commitment. I don't know, throughout his career in parks, he's worked in parks in many different varieties, many different areas. And throughout his career, I can't imagine how many budget presentations that he's provided, but this is actually our last one. And just want to acknowledge that and let him know how much I appreciate him. And I know you all in our community appreciate his leadership for parks and recreation in our community. So Doug, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Obviously, I'm in the conference room with my business manager, Mike Smith, hence his name being on the screen rather than my name. It's not indicative of me already being gone, but I just wanted to explain that. And of course, joining me in the conference room is Melinda McMillan Miller, the Assistant Director. You'll find our budget presentation on page 117, and Mike will be bringing up our proposed presentation. Our mission, before I start in on our mission, when this budget goes into effect on July 1, that'll be the first day of the National Parks and Recreation Month. So I think it's apropos that I am presenting today. Our mission is to provide cultural, social, and recreational experiences to our community so they can have the opportunity to cultivate wellness and enjoy a healthy lifestyle. And our vision is to have OKC Parks seek to inspire our community to explore, learn, play, and grow. We also strive to make sure that we are up to date with new trends, national trends, benchmarking of other municipalities or county agencies that provide parks and recreational opportunities. And as the City Council sets its primary responsibilities or its pillars that it funds, the National Recreation Park Association is almost in complete lockstep with our own City Council. Conservation is highly important to the national organization. Social equity is by far one of the leading examples that we need to mirror, and of course, health and wellness for all citizens or residents of a community or visitation. Unfortunately, we also look to our peers and through agencies such as the Trust for Public Lands. They do a study of the top 100 cities within the nation, and unfortunately, we keep trending at the bottom of that top 100. The report will be coming out next week, but we were given an opportunity to see what our numbers were like ahead of time. Last year, we ranked 97th in the nation. Unfortunately, this year, we are ranking 99th. Part of that drop was because of the pandemic and our loss of revenues and our need for adjusting our general fund budget last year. And with great pride, I go into our next section of it's the actual budget presentation. Our administration organization is made up of the Central Business Office, our marketing activities, our public-private partnerships and our management of those, our park planning and landscaping staff, and our staff a staffing of 5 commissions. Our Central Business Office handles our software programs. It maintains our fishing permit software, our rental software. We have a paid ITIS expert on the floor to help keep our systems running well, and our central business office assists with all payroll. Our planning has 3 landscape architects. This past fall, we had 67 active construction projects going, and the majority of those 67 projects were all 2007 GEO bond projects. So our 3 landscape architects, our principal planner and his 2 staff, were very busy last fall trying to keep those programs and those contractors on task and finishing the projects. And of course, our support of our commissions and committees. We have the Park Commission, the Golf Commission, the Oklahoma City River Redevelopment Authority, our Fish and Game Commission, as well as our Trails Committee. Grounds Management is our largest funded organization. They manage all the park amenities and trails. They do all the grass cutting, or a majority of the grass cutting of our 6,000 acres. They maintain our park athletic fields, and we are getting accolades from the general public and the users this spring, the conditions that our sports fields are in coming out of this nightmare of a winter that we had. Our urban forestry service obviously was overburdened with the October 28th ice storm, but they've been troopers. They've been able to keep up our inventory as we've had to remove a number of trees throughout our system. They've been able to keep up with our inventory, which is very important to us for future references to be able to replace all of the trees that were destroyed by the ice storm. Our park events, obviously they had somewhat of a hiatus this past year because of the pandemic, but they pitched in and they were very helpful in making sure that we were able to track where our contractors were in cleaning up the ice storm, obviously, and as well as all of the snow events we had, they participated in that. And our traffic hazard abatement is what it is. We clear stop signs, we clear traffic signals, but my colleague Jason, who you heard from earlier, we keep his buses from being scraped up from low-hanging trees, and we clear his electrical lines so that the modern streetcar can stay on task and stay on schedule as well. And as you can see, our highlighted measure here is trail miles inspected. And because of the heavy uses that we had through the pandemic, more people biking, more people walking our trails, we made a concerted effort to increase our inspections and our maintenance of those trails. And we estimate that it will go up again in FY21. Natural resources, we don't have a favorite organization, but again, my colleague Bob Teener talking about his live releases. Well, we have 100% live releases of our white-tailed deer, our cottontail rabbits, our possums, and unfortunately our skunks, but that's a whole nother conversation to have. But the Natural Resources Organization are the ones that keep Martin Park active and well-maintained, which again, during the ice storm was not easy, but they were able to open portions of the trails almost immediately. We have one of the only municipal fisheries management program in the United States. And right now we have 6,000 walleye being grown in our containment ponds north of Lake Hefner, ready to be distributed out to our waterways for our anglers to enjoy. Our field horticulturalists, they touch almost as many parks as our grounds maintenance because they're the ones that keep our shrub beds and our entry sign landscaping in good repair and good stead. They are also the ones that are taking care of our boulevard now, and they have their work cut out for them along there. And of course, the Bricktown Canal. One of the highlighted measures that you can see on the screen, we went up exponentially. We thought we had a lot of visitors in 19 with with 88,000 people walking through our counter, but during the pandemic, we went up to 208,793 actually counted people. And we anticipate that to continue going up in this estimated budget year as well. We are encouraging our residents to get out and apply for jobs for both our grounds maintenance and our natural resources. And that leads us up into our recreation division. A lot of congratulations went out to a lot of people during the pandemic, but our recreation division really stepped up to make sure that our residents had a safe place for their children to go and be connected with the school systems. We were very heavily linked into the Oklahoma City public school system, but when we serve the residents that participate in 27 different school districts, we had students from almost all of the school districts at one time or another participating in our community centers. And, we made sure that we were flexible enough, because every once in a while, we would have a student that would come to school or come to our virtual academy that ultimately tested positive. Then our staff would have to be flexible enough to be able to relocate the rest of the children into a safe environment at one of our other facilities. And we were able to take care of 156 individual students during that period of time. So a lot of kudos to all of the recreation division. We had athletics people out there. We had aquatics people helping to keep these virtual sites up and running. And as you can see, even though we were open for business for the virtual classes, our participation in regular programming, because we had to suspend those to keep it safe during the pandemic, did drop. And again, one of the things that we're doing, going back to that cutting edge and making sure that we're providing, tomorrow we have the final response day for our RFP. We did a request for proposals to national consulting organizations to help do a study of all things Oklahoma City recreation. We want to make sure that we are studying how we do business, what our demographics are for our neighborhood facilities, the condition of our facilities, our programming offerings. They're going to look at our senior offerings, including our partner facilities, all of the MAPS 3 senior facilities. They will study those and study the operations of our partners and how they're operating them, so that we can give them advice or help to oversee those contracts and help guide the improvement of those facilities. They will look at youth centers, or what are being called youth centers nationally, so that we can be ready to participate in the conversations with the MAPS 4 Oversight Committee, as well as any subcommittees that will be involved with that activity going forward. And again, I can't stress enough during this presentation, we have jobs available. Grounds maintenance has jobs available. Our natural resources have jobs available. And our recreation is in desperate needs of lifeguards. We have 38 lifeguards that have passed their test. We need 150 to open up all of our aquatic centers. So if anybody's listening, or anybody on the council, if you have a child, a nephew, a niece, a cousin, 16 years of age or older, if they don't know how to swim, we can teach them how to swim. Then we can teach them how to be a lifeguard, and we can guarantee them a job. So please, we need as many people as we possibly can working for the city of Oklahoma City. I'm not just asking for our vacancies. Public Works is in the same way. Mr. Teener is going to be out looking for new bodies as well. Police and fire need new recruits. So please, the city of Oklahoma City is a great place to work and create a career out of it, as Mr. Teener has pointed out. Our public-private partnerships is one of those resounding things that we could not survive without them. This graphic depicts our top tier partners, but all of our partners are important. This is the River Sports Foundation, the Mirror Gardens Foundation, Scissortail Park Foundation, the Civic Center Foundations, and all of our MAPS 3 providers, senior health and wellness providers, are very important to us in making things happen. You can see our highlights there from our rounds of golf to river sports participants. Even with a pandemic, people were getting out and using our facilities and enjoying the parks and recreation opportunities out there. And this is our next public-private partnerships. This is again, ultimately the only way that the city of Oklahoma City could provide with a top-tier Parks and Rec system. We do report these numbers to the Trust for Public Land and to the National Parks and Recreation Association. But again, 97,000 people participated during the pandemic. Yes, it's down from 18, but we still had our true blues that came out and helped provide programming. Our association with the Dodger organization to be able to provide for Little League Baseball in this community, our partnerships with the McLaughlin Family Foundation. This is the first time we've actually had the Fields and Futures logo on our public-private partnerships, because they're historically only providing on school properties. But as we know, with the restructuring of Oklahoma City Public Schools, last year they created some new middle schools. And one of those is down at our Southern Oaks park facilities. The school district didn't have enough real estate to provide competitive fields. So we worked out an arrangements with the school district and Fields and Futures. They're actually finishing up some high-end sports fields at Southern Oaks that the school district will be able to program for their competitive middle school athletics. But when they're not using them, our participants and our residents will be able to play on high-end sports fields at Southern Oaks for the first time in its history. So public-private partnerships keeps us alive and going strong. Our proposed budget for fiscal year 21-22, we are going up to 183 positions. We'll get into that in a few minutes. Our budget is increasing from a general fund perspective, as well as our capital and non-operating budget. The next slide that we'll go to, Mike, is how that breaks out. Our administration, the positions are staying same, but we are dealing with some new capital outlay and new programs that administration will have to manage the resources and making sure that they get put in the proper funding sources. Our grounds management, we are proposing that we go up 9 positions. Now, this isn't new positions. This is restoring positions that were eliminated during the pandemic, when we had to go from 2-week mow to 3-week mows in all of our park properties. These 9 positions are going to restore our ability, if the city council agrees with and approves this budget. This will allow us to go back to mowing all of our neighborhood and community parks every 2 weeks. Our regional and specialty parks, unfortunately, will still remain at 3-week mows with this proposed budget. Our natural resources is showing an increase of approximately 600,000, well, 1,400,000, excuse me, my math is a little off, and going up 4 positions. This is our proudest moment, really. We were asked to help the First Americans Museum become the #1 visiting location in Oklahoma City behind our convention center. But we're so blessed that we were asked to help with the opening and be the people that are going to take care of their grounds and partner with the First Americans Museum staff in bringing outdoor activities to that facility. And we hope that as they grow, we can grow our presence and our assistance with the First Americans Museum going forward. we're so thrilled to be able to, again, with the approval of the city council of this budget proposal, be a part of that next wave of outstanding activities that Oklahoma City provides. Our recreation and health and wellness organization also is going up, and this is in anticipation of us opening the very first full service, full age group recreation center in Ward 7. We are so happy to be bringing the Willa D. Johnson Center online in this next budget year. We are in the process of trying to recruit the staff now. We got permission from the city manager to early fill the vacancies for this particular facility, and that is helping us keep the Pete White facility open and operating while we are doing this recreation study, as well as going out and seeking a new operator for the Pete White facility. So again, we're happy to keep the Pete White Center open for the Capitol Hill community. We are using this as an opportunity to train new staff that will be on board and ready to open the Willa D. Johnson spring of 22. And again, our public-private partnerships is growing through our partnerships. They, like us, are seeing the expenses of operating facilities such as Scissortail or Mirrored Gardens going up. So we have to be ready to support that. And of course, part of this public-private partnership increase has to do, again, with the First Americans Museum to make sure that we have funding to keep that place functioning as it opens in September. The major budget changes, as I kind of identified, we are funding the temporary operations of the Pete White Senior Health and Wellness Center through this budget cycle. We are adding the 5 positions now that will be opening the Willa D. Johnson Center next spring. The restoration of 9 positions for our grounds maintenance. These are the people that will do the 2-week mows. They will have some opportunities to help keep the grounds or our multi-purpose trails open, but the majority of these 9 will be purely keeping or restoring our 2-week mows at our neighborhood community parks. And for those of you that are already asking the question, well, how many of the 173 parks is that? That's approximately 128 of our 170 plus parks are classified as neighborhood or community park. We're adding 4 positions, again, if the budget is approved, for the First Americans facility, adding funding for the First Americans Museum through our partnership section. And one of the biggest things that I think will actually save the taxpayers and our park system a large amount of money is we are going to reestablish the Oklahoma River security. This was a part of our budget reductions back 5 years ago when we were all suffering under that last oil circumstances that we saw. We eliminated security along the Oklahoma River, and the Oklahoma River Redevelopment Authority's facilities were victimized because there wasn't anybody down there after hours. And anybody that has visited the Manuel Perez Park in the last 24 months has seen what has occurred to our restrooms there on a regular basis. That was just one indication of the damage that was done along the river corridor. So again, we're hopeful that you will see the positives of increasing our natural resources budget of $250,000 to increase security along the river, because I think in the end, it will save us millions of dollars of damage. Some of the FY22 projects, the city will be investing close to $61 million. And again, as I identified, Willa D. Johnson Center is being constructed now. We are getting ready to go out for bids for construction of some revitalized sports facilities at the Woodson Park. This is the We hope to have the 240 Sports Complex rehabilitated and open for spring ball in 22. The Deep Fork Trail and the Greenway River Trail will be under construction this fall. These started their funding trail in the 2007 GO bond, and we're just now being able to bring those to fruition through a multitude of different fundings besides the 2007. Crown Heights, the neighborhood will be enjoying their new walking trail that was part of the 07 bond as well. Our trail wayfinding signage that was part of the 2017 GO, that's coming online. The first trail to receive its new wayfinding is the Burr Cooper Trail out around Lake Hefner. Cameron Park right now isn't really a park. It's been dubbed Cameron Park for decades. It was on Water Trust property ever since its inception. But because of the new technology that Chris Browning and his staff have invested in, the way they handle wastewater as well as treating our drinking water, the large reservoirs that were utilized for that purpose up at 122nd in Portland have been drained and have been filled. And now, because of that opportunity, we will be acquiring, or we have acquired, 108 acres formerly of Water Utility Trust lands. And we will be going to the Board of Park Commissioners in June to seek their permission to carry on the name CB Cameron Park, which then will come to the City Council sometime in July for your official review and hopefully approval of that. James E. Stewart Golf Clubhouse is being built. The Willa D. Johnson was a reality that we were happy to have, but the golf course was also being impacted because we want to eliminate the old fairgrounds building at Douglas Park. And since the clubhouse was part of that, as well as the old rec center, that whole building coming down, we had to invest in a new clubhouse at James Stewart. And then again, the Early Wine Golf Course Clubhouse, we will have the groundbreaking in the very near future, probably the first week in June for the construction of that clubhouse. It was also partially funded out of 07, but the majority of the funds are coming from 2017 GO bond funds. And here's some of the renderings that we have, a photograph of the groundbreaking that not only did Mayor Holt participate in, or Councilwoman Nice, but the namesake of the facility, Willa D. Johnson, was out there with her family in the groundbreaking ceremony for the Willa D. Johnson. We were so excited about that very chilly day. At least the sun came out. Some of the other depictions are renderings. This is the soon-to-be Jimmy Stewart Clubhouse. Cameron, soon-to-be, hopefully, CB Cameron Park. It's a concept. The Deep Fork concepts for the trail along the Deep Fork. And I appreciate your time and attention. I'd be happy to answer any questions or go back over any slides.
Yeah, it's Mark Stonecipher here. I want to echo Craig's comments on your great leadership, great experience. Most of all, your friendship. You will be missed. The one thing I was debating with Debbie Martin yesterday, was it 7 years ago or 6 years ago, you first day on the job gave a budget presentation.
Yeah, 7 years ago and 8 days. I started work at 8 a.m. and 8:30 I was presenting the department budget. So, you know, you talk about initiation by fire or baptism by fire. You know, that was throwing me in with no keys, let alone bringing some kind of stability to the organization.
You kind of started with the budget and are going to end with the budget. The one thing I think that's really important to say is that, and I don't think you appreciate this, but 10 years from now, many of us will be saying, that was Doug's idea. That's what Doug did. And we will all be very proud of what you've accomplished. The one thing I've learned about parks, we'd like to see something built overnight. And that just doesn't happen. It takes time. And so we are most appreciative The one thing I'd ask you today, if you wouldn't mind, as far as the public-private partnerships, the community partnerships, I know you mentioned events this summer, such as we need lifeguards for swimming, but I know there's a lot of other things in the works right now with people like the McLaughlin Foundation and Fields and Futures. And so can you kind of give us a picture of what we've got budgeted in for this summer and next fall that'll get our kids out in the parks and participating in events such as soccer?
Well, as I mentioned, the partnership with the Oklahoma City Dodgers organization, our youth baseball program has continued to grow exponentially, and that's both male and female going forward. So we're really excited about that opportunity. We have a very high-end program for our soccer. We partnered with the YMCA who got the nod from Oklahoma City Public Schools to provide third, fourth, and fifth grade competitive sports. But because of the pandemic, the school district hasn't opened up even their outdoor facilities. So we were able to partner with the Y to be able to provide resources for this program to start now for spring baseball and that sort of thing. So we've got a couple of thousand kids that wouldn't normally be participating in a sports endeavor now in this third, fourth, and fifth program with the YMCA. Our PAL association with the Police Athletic League, I know you heard from Chief Gorley a few weeks ago, and he talked very strongly and happily, and he should be, with his Police Athletic League program. We are a big participant in that. We provide for their opportunities to have sports activities. They do some of their boxing and other activities in some of our community centers. So we're happy about that relationship. But it's the outdoor activities. It's getting the people out into our parks. And again, going back to 2-week mows is so very, very important for us to be able to have our citizens, again, continue to participate in a high level in our outdoor. Some of those 67 projects we did last fall were walking paths. So we've got a lot of walking assets out there, and connected to the new sidewalks that the council has built through MAPS 3 and through the Safer Cities sidewalks. You know, we need to make sure that we're taking care of business and keeping those facilities up and clean.
Well, again, thank you, Doug. Hey, could you do me one favor, Doug?
If I can.
Next year, when we're reviewing budget, will you call in case we have a couple of questions?
I'll be there for everybody.
Thank you, Doug.
Hey, Doug, I'll echo everybody's compliments and gratitude for your service. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll have a few more opportunities to say those things. I wanted to ask a quick question, maybe a minor issue, but it's never felt minor to me. You mentioned mowing, and you implied your tone was that we weren't bringing mowing up to the levels that maybe it had been in the past. And maybe correct me if I misread that, but when you said something about regional parks only being 3 weeks, it seemed to be implied that that was not the ideal mowing schedule. So if that's the case, why is that? And maybe should we revisit that, considering revenues seem to be relatively strong and we have a general sense that we're restoring our budget this year?
Well, I think that's a good question. Our bigger regional parks have a lot of wildlife zones in them, and not as much real estate is heavily maintained through mowing or activities such as that. We preserve the undergrowth and for the dynamics of our wildlife. So Bluff Creek is an example, or Trosper Park in Ward 7. Even Dolphin Warden Park is a community park, but not all of Dolphin Warden gets mowed on a 2-week basis because we do have a wildlife area in there as well. We do maintain fire breaks on a regular basis in all of those big regional parks so that if we do get a vandal set fire or a natural lightning strike fire in any of our parks, it doesn't impact the neighborhood. So, but when you have parks that are in excess of 600 acres, 400 acres, 300 acres, doing those on a 2-week mow, that that actually brings the cost up exponentially to do those number of rotations in an annual thing. And we were trying to be respective of the need to restore all of our departments in the city, not just Parks and Rec. We wanted to make sure the funding, we weren't over asking so that the funding's there for the police department, the fire department, Mr. Teener's department. I don't know whether Jason needs it. I'd like to have all my mechanics positions filled, but you know, we're mindful. We're also realistic that we want to be a team player for the city organization. You know, I'm not going to say that I wouldn't enjoy another 9, 12 positions in our grounds maintenance so that every one of our parks is maintained on a 2-week basis, and be happy to work up those numbers if that's the way the council wants to go. But we felt that the majority of our use is in the neighborhood and community parks. That's where our community centers are based, is in those community parks. That's where the majority of our 19 interactive fountains is in those community parks. So those are our active hubs, and we want to make sure they were brought back online and providing that level of service.
So just to be more direct, are we not restoring mowing to previous levels?
We're not restoring the regional parks and especially to 2-week mows.
Okay.
At this juncture.
I think what we can do too, Mayor, is we can watch that to see. I think what Doug said with a lot of the areas that are some of the broader areas that aren't as developed, that we could definitely watch those. I mean, those areas I think we really don't need to be on that 2-week mow, but if there's areas that are closer in where there's maybe more facilities, pavilions, playgrounds, things like that, that we can watch that and see if it's becoming an issue and look to see if we need to make adjustments during the year. That's another option that we would have.
Well, what I'm hearing him say is that we did mow those in the past.
Yes, sir, we did.
So, I mean, if that was a mistake, then say that. But if we're just sort of rationalizing why we're not going to do it anymore, you know, that's fine if we don't have the resources. But if we do have the resources, I mean, this does not seem like a heavy financial lift, but I don't know. So I guess just speaking for myself, I'd love to explore restoring mowing, because I think we basically have been carrying a message this last month that we're restoring our city's budget. And mowing gets mentioned a lot as one of the things we did cuts on a year ago. You know, we said we froze positions, we stopped mowing. I probably said that in 20 different interviews. So, and now I'm out there saying we're restoring the budget, and I'm being told, well, almost, you know, and my feeling is let's restore the budget if we have the resources, obviously. But I'd like to maybe explore that a little deeper.
From Ward, Mark, you're not alone. Stonecipher, could we at least look at those numbers?
Yes, we will get that information for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and again, from Ward 2, let me throw my hat in the ring here. Like, you're not alone, Mayor. Like, I 100% support what you're saying, and I'd love to see those numbers. And I think it would mean a whole lot to our residents to see, of course, their neighborhood parks, but all of them.
I agree. I think the mowing is a big deal. It also helps keep the tick population and the issues that we have in a lot of our parks down. We've got a lot of people who are affected by that. I'd also like to know what it would be like to, if I understood it correctly, we're not even maintaining our own sport complexes currently. And what it would look like if we were to have those positions filled to where we start maintaining all of our own sport complexes. Kind of what the cost to income ratio would look like for that. Is there a way of getting that worked out?
We'd be happy to work on those numbers. To be perfectly frank, the South Lake Soccer facility is managed by South Lake Soccer Association. They do all the maintenance and upkeep. The future CB Cameron Park, that one's been historically maintained and operated by the North OKC Soccer Organization. We have a few football organizations that during their season, they do the majority of the maintenance on some of the football fields that they use, but the rest of the seasons, the rest of the year, we maintain those assets as well. We do maintain the window Window Wisenhunt Sports Complex on Southwest 29th and I-44. And we do maintain Stars and Stripes sports fields and the Wheeler District, the historic Wheeler District Park sports fields, not to be confused with the housing development on the other side of the river. So we do maintain quite a few sports fields, but some of our larger soccer facilities are managed by others. But we can take a look at those cost differentials and provide that to the city council at a later date.
And Doug, a part of that also is it's part of the agreement for their use of the fields, right? That's right. Part of what they're providing for use of the fields is they also maintain those fields.
Right.
In several situations.
Yeah, the revenues that they generate through their memberships and their tournaments and things along those lines go right back into those facilities to make sure the sports turf is maintained properly, the goals are replaced, the netting's replaced, they pay the electric bill, the water bill on those facilities. So it does save the general fund a significant amount of cost, but we will do the cost analysis of what it would cost the general fund to maintain them and what might be the return on that investment by us collecting those fees from the memberships and tournaments as well.
Thank you.
I was going to say I had a couple of questions as we're looking at what's online for the area, especially pertaining to the Willie D. Johnson Recreation Center, the James B. Stewart Golf Course. We have a field that belongs to our city right next to this development area, and there has still been no attention paid to it since I've been in office, at least, for us to look at the potential, not even the potential, it needs to be redone in order for us to look at how we embrace our community and these new facilities that are coming. I think it's quite an eyesore for our neighbors to have to be subjected to a field in this particular part of our community, whereas other parts of our community have city operated fields that don't look like this, to be quite honest, and to be fair about it. So those are my main concerns. Also, and while I have you, maybe after you speak to that, help me with understanding, because I didn't read anything about the fields on 6th and Bryant. So I have plenty of different football teams reaching out to me saying that they are not being able to use those fields. So I would like to know what's going on with those particular fields, if there are supposed to be some upgrades to these fields and that I'm unaware of that we can help them with pertaining to those fields, and what that looks like so we can get some resolve for some of our folks who've been on these fields for quite some time, many years. One team in particular, 10 years, another team over 20 years, and now they're being kicked off these fields, or they're being told that they won't be able to play on these fields. So I'm just curious what we're looking at when it comes to those, because I don't see anything as far as upgrades or closing these fields or anything pertaining to those particular things that I've aforementioned.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. As it relates to Douglas Park, where the Willie D. Johnson Center is going in and that baseball diamond, we have targeted that as one of those items that we want to discuss improvements through MAPS 4 for all neighborhood and community parks. We think that's a very high level priority from our perspective that we have already shared with MAPS 4 as an opportunity for a portion of that $65 million that is identified in MAPS 4 for improving neighborhood and community parks. So that's number one on our list for the renovations and improvements to our baseball diamond that Douglas High School uses for their competitive baseball program. So and currently that's where we're at with that particular facility. The facility that you were mentioning at 6th and Bryant, our lease for that property ended. It was leased from the Water Utilities Trust and our lease has ended there. They have taken back over management of that property, and we have directed those individuals that have had agreements with us to contact the utilities property management organization to start the dialogue with helping to get a new agreement with the Water Utilities Trust to carry on their sports activities on that property. We advise them of our circumstances when we found out our lease had ended, and we directed them to the utilities to start the dialogue with the utilities. And it's no different than what the utilities manages for Putnam City Athletics up on Hefner Boulevard, or the Optimist organization that they have agreements with, or the homeschool organizations for their baseball diamond at Northeast Community Park. So they have the wherewithal and the knowledge to help these organizations continue their sporting activities at 6th and Bryant.
Well, I find it interesting that even for myself, I was unaware of that, or else we'd be trying to advocate to ensure that we can get the use of this field back for these young people and these sports activities that have been in place for quite some time. And clearly to me, it seems quite political because of what the potential is wanting to be for this particular area in the form of a police and fire training facility, for us to now not be able to use this particular field. So city manager, I'm hoping that we can look into this as far as how we engage with our water utility trust in order for us to be able to maintain the field for our residents that practice and play on this field, that have been doing that for at least over 10 years. And now to be displaced because of a lease that we can help to extend is quite troublesome for me to see and understand that we don't have that intact. And we weren't at least aware of the possibility of what this looks like for people who actually use the fields. And I understand that while the football can't play, they're saying they're playing cricket and soccer. So these are the concerns that I have when it comes to what we're looking at and who can play on these particular fields and our particular property that we maintain. And I'm asking, the reason I'm bringing this up, because I know our residents or those groups have to create this lease agreement or this some type of agreement with our Parks Department in order for them to be able to also use these fields. So I know it's quite a few different people that have to work through this process, but I'm hoping that we can engage and continue to engage that conversation.
We'd be happy to help. We'd be happy to help.
Okay, thank you. What are our plans also? I ask this every year as well, pertaining to our senior center, for our seniors that are currently in the facility at the Lincoln Park. We have had troubles with this building, this facility. We have also had troubles with the operator. And now they are closing that facility at 1 o'clock every afternoon. So our seniors don't even get the capacity to enjoy it like other senior facilities that are owned by our Parks Department. And I'd hate to say this is a singled out area for this, but it seems as if. So I'm quite curious what we as a Parks Department are going to do to ensure as we get ready for this new center that's being built, we're continuing to maintain the relationship and bettering the relationship and capacity for our current senior center. And I'm pretty sure when we had the rains that came through, because last year we had some really bad issues with that building as far as flooding is concerned. And we're still looking at those particular things that are happening as well. Or where are we pertaining to that building? Because I don't see that anything pertaining to that building on our budget either.
I will reach out to Kelly Kay, the executive director of the YMCA's, who has the agreement to operate that facility, and see what's going on there. And I'll report back to you, Ms. Nysa. As far as I know, and I will check as soon as I'm offline with my building management staff to see if we've had any work orders submitted from the Y for that facility at any time during the current rains. Nothing has come to my desk, but I will research that with Kelly Kay and their operating hours and what they're doing there, and check with my building staff to see if they've had any calls on the buildings. But that was my promise to you last year, that anytime we got a work order, we would get general services on it and get it taken care of immediately. So if something has fallen out, I apologize. I will look into it and report back to you.
Okay, thank you. And this is my last comment. As we pertaining back to this Douglas field that is operated and owned by our city, I really think it's very important for us to look at this before MAPS 4. And the reason I say that is because we have 2 buildings coming that are being built as we speak to be on board before this happens. And it would be great for us to see all of these things look nice and be presentable for our community, instead of just 2 out of the 3, and we still have to look at something. And again, we're looking at other schools that have fields that are being built brand new, and we still can't even maintain the one that we have. So in looking at those private public partnerships, that information also should be able to help us in order for us to look at being able to get this field redone. And I'm curious to know, even with our Trails and Park Foundation dollars, if that could assist us in being able to upgrade this particular field. And the fact that this being online, with it being a public facility, will we be able to use it for maybe community tournaments and engagement in that particular manner as well, to bring revenue back into either the foundation or our parks department as a whole?
Yes, ma'am. And we have had conversations with, now that the ice has been broken with Fields and Futures on Southern Oaks, we've initiated those conversations to see if they can fund any rehabilitation of the Douglas baseball diamond. We have worked with the Parks and Trails Foundation as an opportunity for them to gain a low-hanging fruit as it relates to the main parameters are there. We just need to get some investments going on that piece of real estate as well. So we have had those conversations offline. It unfortunately was not identified in any of our GOs at this point in time, but we'll take another look at what needs to be done to get that sports facility up to our high standards, so that your community will have another asset that they can participate in.
Well,
I know I'm leaving.
I wouldn't say
your and I'm retiring in 6 weeks, but Melinda McMillan-Miller is sitting right next to me, and she's hearing this, and she is nodding her head in agreement. It is our top priority for this park to get that diamond rehabilitated one way or the other.
All right, thank you. And I mean, I wouldn't say it would be my community per se. I think this is best for our city in order for us to be able to use it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll end on the 2 things I wanted to begin with, but first things first, Mayor, do we have any updates on when the MAPS 4 subcommittees, when we're gonna start seeing those take shape? I'm thinking about it because I feel like Parks is gonna have a lot of work ahead of it over the next several years.
Yeah, so we want to get the implementation plan adopted by the board and then this council, and then I think I'd like to swiftly move forward on the subcommittees at that point. But they just don't really have anything to do until we know kind of the order of things. But that's, Craig, summer, fall, that's coming down the pipe.
Yeah, it's coming late this summer, or it'll be middle summer to late summer, and then early fall is when we expect to have it adopted. I mean, we would hope late summer, early fall, we would have an implementation plan adopted.
Thank you, that's very helpful. And then from there, Doug and Councilwoman Nice's comments brought up a Ward 2 resident who reached out to me, but it's about something in Councilman Greenwell's ward. Maybe you can just kind of help clarify the park that there between Penn and Western around 89th. Is it Straka Park? How often do we mow that?
That facility has been leased out to a soccer organization, and they are maintaining the facility. Otherwise, it would have been on a 3-week mow this whole past year, and it would be on a 3-week mow unless the budget proposal gets changed to have all of our properties at 2-week mows. But that is leased out to a organization, and the citizen that contacted you is well aware of that agreement and that lease.
Just wanted a public moment for that. Thank you. Next, woohoo, congratulations, Crown Heights. I am so excited about the implementation of that walking path. I think that is just so important. I voted that day and was driving home, and I wasn't in the best mood. The pandemic kind of makes my moods just go up and down. And so I was leaving from voting and then turned in to see those new walking trails. And I just, hats off. I think that's going to be a wonderful addition to there. Final thoughts. When you look at our peer cities, and you see us at 99th on that list with which you began your remarks, where I was kind of doing some digging, trying to see like what Kansas City's parks budget is and doing that, but like where, I know we're coming some ways from not even close to prioritizing parks. So what are some areas for you that you see from our peer cities that we could be really drawing from right now?
Well, you mentioned on the per capita expenditure, but I want to take a step back and the reality that we're faced with at this point in time is 620 square miles. If you take the acreage of 620 square miles, and it's 640 acres to a square mile, you can do the math. And we only have 6,000 acres of dedicated park lands. Our percentage of park lands to the whole of the city is one of the largest detractors. Now, we can't do a whole lot about that unless we really go out and start buying up lots of real estate or finding industrial ways or out of the box thinking that we could add 4, 5, 8,000 acres to the system, one fell swoop. But again, it goes back to the per capita. And we are the only state in the nation that does not allow our property tax to be used for our general budget. So we rely only on sales tax to do all of our maintenance activities. Our property tax goes, obviously, in a big way, goes to improving our system, and it has expanded our system. But when you're being compared with cities that use property tax as well as sales tax to provide for the general fund budget, we are at a disadvantage when you're trying to fund larger organizations than ours with sales tax only. So that's another big player in the disadvantage that we have. So the only redeeming thing that I saw in our 99 out of 100 score is we're 5th in the nation in accessibility, and we're pretty high in equity as well. So we have a few things in that study that you'll see next week when it's published, and I will get each one of you a hard copy of the TPL's report so you can see each category. But we're up against some significant areas that will be hard for us to overcome in moving up the ladder.
I'm just thinking aloud, which I guess can be kind of dangerous, but do we have any sense of a ranking internally of where our parks are in terms of, and again, I'm just talking, like, are there metrics by which we're able to measure a park's, oh gosh, I even struggle to use the word usefulness, but like what makes a park work for its residents? And then pairing that with where all, what did you say, about 120 something neighborhood parks are? And I'm wondering if we have such a ranking or metrics by which to measure what makes a park successful for its residents. Are we, and I hope we are, if we do have this, planning to utilize that in conversations with neighborhoods when we start going out there and doing the maps for work ahead of us?
But I think one of the big things that we benefit from, one of the top benchmarks that all municipalities are striving for is either be within a 10-minute walk or within a half mile of every resident. And we score significantly high on we have park assets within a half mile of our residents. That's primarily, we are successful in those realms because of the proliferation and the success we've had in building the multi-use trails across our city. We are still lacking on the far south end of town. I'm not going to lie to you. We still have some needs for multi-use trails that cross 3, 4, and 5 wards to bring more of those residents into that half mile or that 10-minute walking distance. But so we're pretty high from that. Whether you look at TPL's rating systems, the National Park and Recreation Association's level of rating us, as long as we can continue to strive towards getting our assets within a half mile or at least a 10-minute walk. And that's a 10-minute walk without major obstructions, highways, main corridors, and things along those lines. It's kind of like in your ward. We just had that conversation for Flower Mound Park the other day. People live right across Classen from Flower Mound, but it's a significant barrier, so they don't live within a half mile or a 10-minute walk to their nearest park. So it's one of those dilemmas that we are faced with constantly, other than a proliferation of traffic signals to make it easier to cross those main thoroughfares. So those things are redeeming us on a national level, and we can be proud of, and that's part of our scoring. And one of the other things is the city does do that citizen survey annually, and our numbers, they uptick towards people using our parks for their recreational opportunities on a higher level, usually going up annually, but their respect for their park system has gone up as well. So we're happy about those numbers and that internal scoring factor.
Do we have a sense of amenities that, I guess, raise the standard of a park? I guess is kind of my question there. Like
we have very few park assets that we have owned for years that would not hold up to any park and rec standard. We just did an analysis. You will receive, or you received the updated park master plan that gave a new reality to our system. Our developed parks have the bare minimum, usually of what the community or the neighborhood surrounding that park wants. Playgrounds, walking paths, benches, that sort of thing for neighborhood parks. And then we go up from there. Community parks usually have a community center or event center or interactive fountain or a swimming pool, something along those lines. So our developed parks are developed. We just need more of them, in my opinion.
Okay. And I'm sure all that will become very helpful during the Maps for Parks conversation. Just a couple final things. One, Military Park has been pretty high back on my mind as I've been talking with our Asian district. And I think that when we are going back out there for Maps for, I think we need to be very intentional in learning from them, the district specifically, what they have learned from the Asian night market events, right? Like whether it was a lack of an access to electricity for like the food trucks, lighting generally, canopy. Like I think it might seem like a park like Military Park is done because of the investments, but we've learned a lot more in my conversations with Tune to Win and some of the district leaders about the role that Military Park can play in terms of further activating the district development, and then what we see with the BRT coming. So that would be something I'd want to put on Parks's radar as we move through MAPS 4, is really thinking about what we've learned from the Asian night market events with Military Park. I feel like there was something else. Yeah, I guess those are the main things. And then I missed when I didn't say this to Bob earlier. Bob, congrats. Doug, congrats. Go forth into our world and find peace.
Well, I'll let Mr. Freeman take the meeting back over, but I want to leave all of the council, Parks and Rec professional never thinks a park is done. So we are never done with any park that we have under our management and control. Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Thank you all. I truly appreciate it. And one last comment to Mayor Holt and all of the city council. This has been the best damn job I have had in my 45 years of being a Parks and Rec professional. It's because of the involvement that the city council has shown, the investment that the voting public has put into the city as a whole. And I'm so very proud to have worked here. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate that. Appreciate your years of service, not only here, but in parks and communities across the country. I really appreciate your leadership that you brought here and your experience. I really appreciate everyone's questions and engagement today. That's the last presentation that we have. I just want to remind everyone that we have another council meeting where we'll focus on the budget on June 1st. We'll have public works, utilities, and airports, and then we'll present the public comments then. And just a reminder to those that might be watching that we do have the opportunities created both on okc.gov at okc.gov/budget, where you can provide comments. You can email to budgetcomments@okc.gov as well, or you could text at 405-252-1053. We also accept any letters that are mailed in, can be mailed to the city clerk, and that would be at 200 North Walker, Suite 200. And so we really appreciate the engagement and involvement here, and appreciate everyone's time this morning.
All right. Well, thank you, Craig, and your team again for these great presentations and all the work that's gone into this process. That concludes item 4. We have item 5, citizens to be heard. We have one citizen who signed up to speak. It's Jess Eddy on the line. Okay.
Jess, you may need to star 6.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
After having some time to review the budgets that have been submitted, budget proposals that have been submitted, first I'd like to request that the city review its submission and presentation policies or procedures going forward so that the public can review the hard copy budget proposals prior to the meetings in which they're discussed. It's taken me some time and the public some time to fully evaluate, particularly the police department's budget evaluation. I now have some concerns that I'd just like to point out, and I really want to speak as constructively as possible to Todd and Mark, if he were here. It doesn't appear he is anymore. But this page C139 of the police budget, and it's listed major budget changes. And I know you all don't have the document in front of you, but I'm sure you can recall it later. And if you just look at the list of items titled major budget changes, really none of these are reflective of the portions of the community that have asked for substantial change and reform in policing. And while I disagree and we disagree on a lot of the substantive issues around policing and even the community is very polarized around issues about policing. One of the things that gives rise to that polarization is this institution not being responsive to that significant portion that is critical and that is requesting reform. And I think it is most clearly revealed in this document of major budget changes that all of these are addressed to perpetuate. Most of them start with restore. So it's already something that has already been being done. It's not a novel concept. It's not a new or alternative proposal. And it's reciprocated, or it's repetitive of what has been done over the years that gives rise to the communities that I associate with that have severe issues with policing. You know, I got to look at this. One, number 11, a particular concern to me is to allocate $2 million to the state asset forfeiture.
30-second reminder.
$2 million to the state asset forfeiture program. The state asset forfeiture has been evaluated by the Supreme Court as a clear Fifth Amendment violation. You know, and then there's later monies that are allocated in the breakdown. It's an 89% increase. Why are we putting money towards state asset forfeiture program? I also wanted to draw this $600,000 that's being allocated to court enforcement of warrants. Why would OKCPD be enforcing warrants on municipal charges in Oklahoma City? Up to $614,000 worth of operation budget. I mean, I thought the city was opposed to locking people up for municipal.
All right, that concludes citizens to be heard, and that brings us to item 6, adjournment. And there's no further business, and we are adjourned. Thank you all for your time.